The crystal chandelier trembled above the ballroom as silence crashed through the crowd like shattered glass. Duchess Elowyn Carrick stood perfectly still, her champagne flute frozen halfway to her lips, while every pair of eyes in the room watched a woman in scarlet stride toward her husband. The woman's voice cut through the orchestra's dying notes. Choose, Ronan. Right now. Her or me. 8 years of marriage reduced to a spectacle. 8 years of sleeping in separate wings, of polite nods at breakfast, of a husband who looked through her like she was fog. And now this. Elowyn's heart hammered against her corset as Duke Ronan Carrick, the man who'd never once defended her, never once reached for her hand, turned, not toward the woman in scarlet, toward his wife. The room held its breath. So did Elowyn, because whatever happened next would either bury her completely or crack open a door she'd long since stopped believing existed. This is a story about what happens when silence finally breaks. Stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The thing about a public humiliation is that it happens in stages. First comes the shock, the moment your brain refuses to process what's unfolding. Then the heat, crawling up your neck like poison ivy. Then the calculations, how to stand, where to look, whether your face is doing that thing where it goes completely blank or worse, shows everything. Elowyn Carrick had perfected the blank face years ago. She stood near the marble colonnade at the edge of the Ashford Winter Ball, a position she'd chosen specifically because it offered easy access to the terrace if escape became necessary. The champagne in her hand was her second glass, enough to take the edge off, not enough to dull her reflexes. She'd learned that balance, too. The ballroom glittered like something out of a storybook, all golden light and swirling gowns, laughter echoing off vaulted ceilings painted with cherubs and clouds. The kind of beauty that made you forget the world outside could be cruel. Elowyn had stopped forgetting that around year 3 of her marriage. She was watching a group of younger women dance. Girls, really, 18 or 19. Their faces still soft with the belief that the right dress and the right smile could secure the right future. When the music stuttered. Not stopped. Stuttered. The orchestra played on for another few bars, but the sound had changed. Conversation dropped in waves across the room, heads turning like compass needles finding north. Elowyn looked up. A woman stood in the center of the ballroom. She wore scarlet, a bold choice for a winter ball where every other woman had chosen ice blue or silver or champagne gold. The dress hugged her like a second skin, and she moved through the crowd with the kind of confidence that came from knowing people would step aside. Elowyn recognized her immediately. Vivian Harcourt. Her stomach did something complicated. Vivian had been gone for years, 6, 7, disappearing from society after some scandal Elowyn had never fully understood. Something about a broken engagement and a family disgrace, whispers that died out when there was no one left to whisper about. But here she was, cutting through the crowd like a ship's prow through water, and she was heading directly toward... Oh no. Ronan. Duke Ronan Carrick stood near the center of the room, surrounded by the usual constellation of minor lords and ambitious merchants hoping to catch his attention. He was tall, taller than most men in the room, with dark hair that he wore a bit too long, and a face that would have been handsome if it ever showed anything resembling warmth. It didn't. Elowyn had memorized every angle of that face during their wedding ceremony 8 years ago, searching for some flicker of feeling, some sign that the man she was binding herself to might one day look at her like she mattered. She'd stopped searching around year 2. Ronan saw Vivian approaching. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. A subtle tension, like a wire pulled taut. The orchestra gave up entirely now. Silence spread through the ballroom like spilled wine. Vivian stopped 3 feet from Ronan. "Hello, Ronan," her voice carried. She'd meant it to. "Vivian." Ronan's tone was carefully neutral. "This is unexpected." "Is it?" Vivian tilted her head. "I told you I'd come back when I was ready." "That was a long time ago." 6 years. Vivian's smile was sharp. "I counted." Elowyn's grip tightened on her champagne flute. She should leave. This was clearly private, clearly something that had nothing to do with her, clearly... "I've spent 6 years putting myself back together," Vivian said. 6 years becoming someone worthy of standing in the same room as you again. Oh God. Vivian, this isn't the place.
Isn't it? Vivian's voice rose just slightly. You made a choice 6 years ago. You chose duty over love. You chose that arrangement. She gestured vaguely toward the crowd, and Elowen realized with creeping horror that some of that gesture might include her, over what we had. What we had was complicated. What we had was real.
The ballroom was so quiet now that Elowen could hear her own heartbeat. Or maybe that was someone else's. Maybe everyone's hearts were hammering in unison, watching this drama unfold like spectators at a hanging. She should definitely leave. Her feet wouldn't move. I'm not doing this here, Ronan said quietly.
Then where?
Vivian took a step closer.
Your study? Your estate? Are you going to hide me away again, Ronan? Shuffle me into shadows while you maintain your perfect, cold, respectable marriage?
Elowen's face burned. That's enough. Ronan's voice had an edge now.
No.
Vivian shook her head. It's not nearly enough. I've been quiet for 6 years. I've been patient. Her voice cracked slightly. I've been waiting, and I'm done waiting. Someone in the crowd gasped softly. Elowen couldn't tell who. I want an answer, Vivian said. Right here. Right now. An answer to what? Choose. Vivian's eyes were bright, fevered. Her or me? The ballroom seemed to tilt. Elowen's vision narrowed to a pinpoint. The champagne flute in her hand trembled. She set it down quickly on a nearby table before she dropped it. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. She was a prop in someone else's drama, a convenient symbol of duty and obligation, the wife-shaped obstacle standing between Ronan and his apparently passionate past. She was the cold arrangement, the loveless necessity, the thing to be chosen against. Of course he would choose Vivian. Why wouldn't he? Their marriage was a business transaction. She'd known that from the beginning, had signed papers in her father's study while her father's hands shook and his voice cracked with relief. She'd worn white and said vows and moved into Carrick Manor and taken her place as Duchess, and Ronan had been polite, distant, correct, never cruel, but never warm. They lived in the same house and rarely spoke. They attended functions together and sat at opposite ends of long tables. They had separate bedrooms, separate lives, separate everything. She had no claim on him beyond a legal document and a ring she barely remembered to wear. So why did her chest feel like it was being crushed? Vivian, Ronan's voice was low, dangerous. Don't do this. I have to. Vivian's hands were shaking now. I have to know. Did I wait for nothing? Did I fix myself, rebuild myself, make myself into someone you could... She stopped. Choose, Ronan. The crowd pressed closer. Not physically. No one moved, but the attention was suffocating, hundreds of eyes watching, waiting for the Duke to humiliate his wife in front of everyone who mattered. Elowen's nails bit into her palms. She should leave. She should turn and walk away with her head high, refuse to be part of this spectacle. Let them have their dramatic reconciliation without an audience of one unwanted wife bearing witness. But she couldn't move, because Ronan was turning. Not toward Vivian, toward her. His eyes found hers across the ballroom, gray eyes cold as winter storms, and for the first time in 8 years, he was looking at her. Actually looking, seeing her. The crowd noticed. Heads swiveled. Whispers started and died. Ronan moved. He crossed the ballroom floor with long strides, and the crowd parted for him like water, and Elowen's heart was hammering so hard now she thought it might crack a rib. He stopped in front of her. Up close, she could see the tension in his jaw, the rigid set of his shoulders. He looked like a man going to war. Ronan, she started. He held out his hand. Elowen stared at it. Dance with me, he said. It wasn't a request. She looked past him toward Vivian, who stood frozen in the center of the ballroom, her scarlet dress like a wound against all that gold and silver. I don't... Elowen's voice came out thin. I don't understand. Dance with me, Ronan repeated. His hand didn't waver. The smart thing would be to refuse, to protect herself from whatever game this was, whatever calculation had led him to use her as a shield against his past. But Elowen had stopped being smart around year 4, when smart meant surviving, and surviving meant slowly disappearing. She placed her hand in his fingers closed around hers, warm, solid, real. He led her onto the ballroom floor, and the crowd pulled back further, giving them space. The orchestra, bless them, seemed to understand the assignment. A waltz began. Ronan pulled her close. Not too close. He knew the proper distance, had been trained in it probably from birth, but closer than they'd been in years. His hand settled at her waist. Hers found his shoulder. They began to turn. Elowen had forgotten he knew how to dance. They danced at their wedding, of course, but that had been stiff and ceremonial, a performance for witnesses. This was different. He moved with confidence, guiding her through the steps, and she followed because her body remembered the patterns even if her mind was still trying to catch up. "What are you doing?" she whispered. "What I should have done years ago." "That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting right now." She wanted to pull away, wanted to slap him, wanted to demand real answers instead of cryptic non-statements that meant nothing and everything. But the whole ballroom was watching. And Vivian, Elowen caught a glimpse of her over Ronan's shoulder. Vivian stood exactly where they'd left her, scarlet against marble, her face a mask of shock and something that might have been grief. "You're using me," Elowen said quietly. Ronan's hand tightened at her waist. "No. You're making a choice for the audience. I'm making a choice. Period." The waltz spun them in a slow circle. Other couples were starting to join now, filling the floor, providing cover. But the damage was done. Everyone had seen, everyone knew. Duke Ronan Carrick had chosen his wife. "I don't believe you," Elowen said. "I know. This doesn't change anything." "Maybe not." Ronan's voice was rough. "But it's a start." "A start of what?" He didn't answer. The waltz continued. 3 minutes that felt like 3 hours. When the music finally died, Ronan stepped back and released her, not abruptly, but with clear finality. He bowed. Correct. Proper. She curtsied automatically. And then he was gone, disappearing into the crowd with that same long stride, leaving her standing alone on the ballroom floor while conversations erupted around her like brushfire. Elowen's hands were shaking. She needed air. She made it to the terrace through sheer force of will, pushing past concerned faces and curious stares until the cold night hit her like a slap. The terrace was empty. Everyone else was inside, devouring the scandal like starving dogs. She gripped the stone railing and tried to breathe. "Well," a voice behind her, "that was quite a performance." Elowen turned. Vivian stood in the doorway, backlit by golden light, still beautiful and terrible in her scarlet dress. "I don't want to talk to you," Elowen said. "I imagine not." Vivian stepped onto the terrace. "But I think we should anyway." "Why?" "Because you deserve to know what you're fighting for." Vivian's smile was bitter. "Or rather, what you're not fighting for." "I'm not fighting at all." "Exactly." Vivian moved closer. "You're just standing there, letting him use you as a shield, letting him pretend he's made some grand romantic choice when really he's just..." "Just what?" Elowen's voice came out sharper than she'd intended. "Maintaining appearances." Vivian's eyes glittered. "That's all you've ever been to him, a Duchess-shaped placeholder, a respectable arrangement. He doesn't love you." "I know that." The admission surprised them both. Vivian blinked. "Then why what? Why did I dance with him? Why didn't I humiliate myself further by refusing?" Elowen laughed, and it came out jagged. "You think you're telling me something I don't know? I've lived in that man's house for 8 years. I know exactly what I am to him." "Then leave." "And go where?" Vivian had no answer for that, because that was the thing about being a duchess. Even a duchess in name only. Even a duchess who slept alone and ate breakfast in silence and attended balls as a decorative afterthought. You were still a duchess. You still had position, protection, a roof over your head and food on the table. Elowen's father had lost everything, the Ashford estate, the investments, the reputation. Everything except his daughter's marriage contract, signed and sealed before the debts came due. If she left Ronan, she had nothing, and they both knew it. "He should have chosen me," Vivian said quietly. 6 years ago, he should have chosen me." "Maybe he should have." Elowen turned back to the railing. "But he didn't. And now we're all stuck living with that choice. Are you really going to just accept this? Accept what? A loveless marriage? I accepted that on my wedding day. Elowen's voice was flat. You want him to love you. I don't know what I want anymore. Maybe just to stop feeling like a ghost in my own life. Vivian was quiet for a long moment. He's a coward, she said finally. Probably. He's choosing duty over happiness. Definitely. You could set him free. Elowen looked at her. Really looked. Vivian was beautiful. Objectively, undeniably beautiful. But there was something desperate in her eyes. Something that had been waiting 6 years and still hadn't learned when to stop. I'm not the one keeping him prisoner, Elowen said softly. Whatever cage he's in, he built it himself. She walked past Vivian, back into the ballroom, into the noise and light and hungry stares. Let them look. Let them whisper. She'd survived 8 years of whispers. She could survive one more night. But as she moved through the crowd, searching for the exit, for her carriage, for any escape from this gilded nightmare, she caught sight of Ronan. He stood near the far wall, surrounded by other men now, their faces serious, their voices low. Business. Always business. But his eyes tracked her across the room, watching, like he'd been watching all night, like maybe he'd been watching for longer than she'd realized. And Elowen felt something crack in her chest, not breaking, not quite, but shifting, like ice starting to thaw after a long winter, which was dangerous. Because hope, she'd learned, was the most dangerous thing of all. Boss, Gibi? The carriage ride back to Carrick Manor was silent. Ronan sat across from her, his face shadowed, his expression unreadable. They'd left the ball separately. He'd finished whatever conversation he was having, she'd collected her cloak, but their carriages had been called at the same time, and the footman had simply assumed they'd ride together. Neither had corrected him. Now they swayed through dark streets, the sounds of the city muffled by velvet curtains and thick glass, and Elowen wondered if she should say something. Thank you for the dance? Why did you do that? Who the hell is Vivian Harcourt, and why does she think she has a claim on you? But the words stuck in her throat, and Ronan seemed equally incapable of speech, so they just sat there like two strangers who happened to share a last name. The manor loomed out of the darkness, all stone and shadow, windows glowing faintly from the servants' preparations for their return. The carriage stopped. A footman opened the door. Ronan stepped out first, then turned to offer his hand. Elowen hesitated. It's just a hand, he said quietly. She took it. They walked into the manor together side by side, which was unusual enough that the head butler looked momentarily confused before recovering his professional composure. Will you be requiring anything, Your Grace? No. Ronan's voice was clipped. We'll retire separately. Of course they would. Elowen started toward the east wing, her rooms, her carefully constructed isolation. Elowen. She stopped, turned. Ronan stood at the base of the grand staircase, one hand on the banister. He looked tired. Actually tired, not just the practiced exhaustion of a man with too many responsibilities. Something deeper. Yes? He opened his mouth, closed it, seemed to be waging some internal war. Thank you, he said finally. For the dance. You didn't give me much choice. I know. A pause. I'm sorry. The apology landed like a stone in still water. Elowen stared at him. In 8 years of marriage, she could count on one hand the number of times he'd apologized for anything. And never like this. Never with that raw edge in his voice. Why did you do it? She asked. Really? Ronan's jaw worked. Because I'm tired of making the wrong choice. And I'm suddenly the right one? I don't know. He met her eyes. But she was definitely wrong. It wasn't a declaration of love, wasn't even a declaration of preference, just a simple statement of fact. Vivian was wrong, which perversely felt more honest than any pretty lie he could have told. Good night, Ronan, Elowen said. Good night. She climbed the stairs to her wing, feeling his eyes on her back the whole way. What? Sleep didn't come. Elowen lay in her enormous bed, a bed designed for two that had only ever held one, and stared at the canopy above her while her mind ran in circles. Choose, Ronan.
her or me. He'd chosen. But why? Not love. Definitely not love. They barely spoke to each other outside of necessary coordination about social events and household management. Duty, then? Some sense of obligation to the vows they'd made? But Ronan had never seemed particularly moved by duty to her specifically. He fulfilled his obligations to the duchy, to his business interests, to the social structures that kept their world running. But to her, she was just another obligation, a box to check. Wife, present and accounted for. Unless... Elowen sat up. Unless something had changed. She got out of bed, pulled on a robe, and padded barefoot to her sitting room. She'd stopped sleeping well around year 5, had taken to reading late into the night just to tire herself out enough to manage a few hours of unconsciousness. But tonight she wasn't looking for a novel. She opened the small writing desk in the corner, a delicate thing with hidden compartments and tiny drawers, and pulled out the folders she kept tucked in the back. Papers. Documents. The detritus of 8 years of marriage. She'd kept everything. Every letter from her father's solicitor. Every financial statement. Every piece of correspondence related to the arrangement. Because Elowen had known, even on her wedding day, that something wasn't right. Her father had been desperate. Not just worried about money, desperate in a way that made his hands shake and his voice crack. And Ronan had appeared like an answer to a prayer she hadn't known her father was saying. Rich, titled, willing to marry the daughter of a minor lord whose finances were in shambles. Too willing. She'd asked her father about it once, a week before the wedding. Why does he want to marry me? Her father had patted her hand. Because you're beautiful and accomplished, and any man would be lucky. Father, she'd cut him off gently. Really? He'd looked at her for a long moment, and she'd seen something crumble in his eyes. Because I asked him to. You asked? I asked him to save us. Her father's voice had dropped to a whisper. And he said yes. She'd wanted to ask more. Wanted to understand what save us meant, what the cost was, what Ronan was getting in return. But her father had looked so broken already that she'd just nodded and smiled and said it would be fine. It had not been fine, but it had been survivable. Until tonight. Elowen spread the papers across her desk and started reading. Really reading, not just skimming for relevant details. Looking for the things she'd missed, the explanation hiding in plain sight. Hours passed. Dawn started to creep through her windows, gray and cold, and then she found it. A letter dated 7 months before her wedding. From Ronan's solicitor to her father's solicitor. She'd seen it before, had filed it away as just more legal language, more formal agreements about settlements and arrangements. But now, reading it again with fresh eyes. In exchange for the full settlement of outstanding debts owed to the Carrick estate and associated creditors, Lord Ashford agrees to the proposed marriage arrangement between his daughter, Elowen Ashford, and Duke Ronan Carrick. This agreement supersedes all previous claims and obligations. Elowen's hands started shaking. Outstanding debts, owed to the Carrick estate. Her father hadn't just been in financial trouble. He'd been in debt to Ronan specifically. And Ronan had offered a solution. Marry my daughter, and I'll forgive everything. No. Marry me your daughter, and I'll forgive everything. She kept reading. There were more documents, more details. A full accounting of her father's debts, gambling debts, investment debts, loans he'd taken from other nobles and never repaid. Her father had been drowning, and Ronan had been one of the creditors, the largest creditor, and he'd bought himself a wife to settle the account. Elowen's vision blurred. She wasn't a duchess. She was a payment plan, a debt instrument, made flesh and dressed in white lace and paraded down an aisle to seal a transaction. Her hands were shaking so badly now that she had to set down the papers. 8 years. 8 years of wondering why he never looked at her, why he kept her at arm's length, why their marriage felt like a business arrangement. Because it was a business arrangement. She was the collateral her father had used to buy his freedom. And Ronan? What was Ronan? A creditor who'd taken payment in the form of a convenient wife? A duke who'd needed a duchess and saw an opportunity? Or something worse? Elowen stood up so fast her chair tipped over. She needed answers. She needed them right now. She threw on a day dress without bothering to call for her maid, not caring that it buttoned wrong in the back, not caring that her hair was a mess from tossing all night.
She stormed through the manor's corridors, her bare feet slapping against cold marble, past startled servants who hadn't expected either Duke or Duchess to be awake this early. Ronan's study was in the West Wing. She'd been inside it exactly twice in 8 years, once on a tour of the manor after their wedding, once to sign some document he'd needed her signature on. She didn't bother knocking. The door slammed open. Ronan looked up from his desk, papers spread before him, clearly having not slept either. His shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, his hair disheveled. He looked almost human. "Elowin, I was payment," she said. He went very still.
"I was payment for my father's debts. That's what this marriage is. That's what I've been for 8 years. Not a wife, not a partner, just..." Her voice cracked. "Just a ledger entry marked settled." Ronan stood slowly. "Where did you..." "Does it matter?" She laughed, and it came out sharp enough to cut. "I found the documents, the real documents, the ones that explain why a duke would marry so far beneath his station, why you'd take on a wife you clearly never wanted."
"Elowin? Was last night about protecting your investment?" She was shaking now, rage and grief warring in her chest. "Is that why you chose me?" "Because Vivienne didn't come with a debt portfolio attached." "No." Ronan moved around the desk. "That's not..." "Then what?" She threw her hands up. "What is it, Ronan?" "Because I've spent 8 years trying to understand why you married me, why you keep me around, why you bother maintaining this fiction of a marriage when you clearly feel nothing.
"I feel nothing?" His voice rose to match hers. "You think I feel nothing?" "You've certainly perfected the impression." They stared at each other across the study, both breathing hard. "You want the truth?" Ronan said quietly, dangerously. "Fine. Yes, your father owed me money, a lot of money, and yes, I offered him a solution that involved marrying you, but it wasn't..." He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. "It wasn't just about the debt." "Then what was it about?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Sit down," he said finally. "Please, this is going to take a while." Elowin didn't sit. "I've been sitting for 8 years," she said. "I'll stand." Ronan's jaw tightened, but he nodded. He moved to the window, putting distance between them, his silhouette dark against the growing dawn light. "Your father came to me 9 years ago," he said. "Not about the debts, not at first. He came because he was desperate, and I was..." He paused. "I was someone who knew how to fix problems quietly." "What kind of problems?" "The kind that end with a noose or exile." Ronan's voice was flat. "Your father hadn't just borrowed money. He'd borrowed from people who don't accept apologies as payment, and he'd done something worse." Elowin's stomach dropped. "What?" "He'd forged documents." Ronan turned to face her. "Investment certificates, promissory notes. He'd been selling fake shares in mining operations that didn't exist, collecting money from merchants and minor nobility who trusted the Ashford name." The room tilted. "No." The word came out weak. "He wouldn't..." "He did." Ronan's eyes were steady on hers. "And when people started asking questions, when the operations failed to produce returns, he panicked. He came to me because I had connections, resources, the ability to make problems disappear." Elowin's hands found the back of a chair. She gripped it. "You're lying." "I'm not. My father was many things, but he wasn't a criminal. He was a desperate man who made terrible choices." Ronan's voice softened slightly. "And he loved you enough to beg me not to expose him, to beg me to find another way. So you married me." The words tasted like ash. "You married me to cover up fraud." "I married you to keep your father out of prison." Ronan moved closer. "The debts he owed me were real, but they weren't the whole story. If I'd called in those debts publicly, if I'd demanded payment through proper channels, an investigation would have started. Other creditors would have come forward. The forgeries would have been discovered. And my father would have hanged." "Yes." Elowin's vision blurred. She blinked hard, refusing to let tears fall. "So you bought his silence with a marriage." "Bought mine too." "I gave him a way out," Ronan said quietly. "And I gave you..." "What?" She looked up sharply. "What did you give me? A cold house? A husband who treats me like furniture? 8 years of wondering what I did wrong? Protection." The word came out fierce. "I gave you protection. From scandal, from poverty,
from the stain of your father's crimes. You think being a duchess in a loveless marriage is hard? Try being the daughter of a convicted forger. Try finding work, finding shelter, finding anyone willing to acknowledge your existence. That's not protection. That's a cage. It kept you safe. Safe from what? From life? Elwyn laughed bitterly. I've been buried alive in this manner, Ronan, safe and suffocating. He flinched. The silence stretched between them, thick and terrible. Why didn't you tell me? Elwyn asked finally. All these years, why didn't you just... Because your father made me promise. Ronan's voice was rough. He made me swear I'd never tell you what he'd done. He said it would destroy you, and He stopped. I honored that promise, even though it destroyed us instead. There was no us to destroy. We were an arrangement, a necessary fiction. Is that really what you thought? Elwyn stared at him. That I married you knowing it was fake? Knowing I was just, what, collateral? Ronan went very still. Your father told you it was a business arrangement. He said he'd explained. He told me you were helping him, that you were being generous, marrying a girl from a struggling family. Her voice cracked. I thought you were doing us a kindness. I thought maybe over time we could build something real. Elwyn, I tried. The words burst out of her. I tried so hard, Ronan. That first year, I tried to talk to you, to learn what you liked, to be someone you might actually want to be married to. And you looked right through me, every time, like I wasn't even there. Ronan's face had gone pale. I thought it was me, Elwyn continued. I thought I wasn't pretty enough, smart enough, interesting enough. I thought if I could just figure out what I was doing wrong. She stopped, breathed. And the whole time, you were keeping me at arm's length because of a promise to a man who sold his daughter to cover his crimes. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? She moved toward him now, anger burning through grief. Tell me, Ronan. Make me understand why you chose to punish me for my father's sins. I wasn't punishing you. Then what do you call 8 years of silence? Self-preservation. The words exploded out of him. I was trying to keep distance between us because the alternative was... He stopped, turned away. Was what? Dangerous. Elwyn froze. What? Ronan's shoulders were rigid. You want the whole truth? Fine. Your father came to me because we'd met before. At a business dinner 2 years before your wedding. He brought you with him. She tried to remember. There had been so many dinners, so many introductions to men her father hoped might notice her, might offer. I noticed you, Ronan said quietly, still facing away. You were wearing green. You spent half the dinner arguing with Lord Pemberton about mining regulations. And you were right, and he hated it. You were brilliant. Elwyn's heart stuttered. When your father came to me desperate, when he laid out all his crimes and begged for help, Ronan's voice was barely audible now. I saw an opportunity. A terrible, selfish opportunity. I could help him. I could make his problems disappear. And in exchange, I could have you. The room was spinning. You wanted... I told myself it was practical, Ronan continued. I needed a wife eventually. You needed protection. It made sense, but the truth... He finally turned to face her, and his eyes were raw. The truth is, I wanted you from the first moment I saw you argue about mine safety regulations with a pompous lord twice your age. And when the opportunity came to bind you to me legally, I took it. That's not... Elwyn couldn't get her thoughts to line up. You don't even like me. I kept my distance because I liked you too much. That makes no sense. Doesn't it? Ronan's laugh was harsh. You were 20 years old, forced into a marriage to save your father. You didn't choose me. You didn't want me. You were trapped, and I was your jailer. What was I supposed to do? Force my attention on you? Pretend we had something real when I'd bought you like property? So you decided to ignore me instead. I decided to give you space, to let you live your life without the burden of a husband who... He stopped. Who what? Who had no right to want you the way I did. The confession hung in the air between them. Elwyn felt like the ground had vanished beneath her feet. 8 years of cold silence, 8 years of distance and formality and careful politeness. And underneath it all, you're lying, she said. I'm not. You expect me to believe you've spent 8 years pining for me while treating me like a stranger? I don't expect you to believe anything. Ronan's voice was tired now. I'm just telling you the truth. Finally. Why now? The question came out sharp. Why tell me any of this now? Because of last night. He moved closer. Because Vivian demanded I choose, and I realized I'd already made that choice 8 years ago. I just hadn't had the courage to admit it. Vivian. Elowen latched onto the name like a weapon. Who is she really? Ronan's expression shuddered. Someone from before. Before what? Before I met you. That's not an answer. It's the only one that matters. Ronan's jaw set. Whatever Vivian and I had, it ended the day I decided to marry you. But she didn't know that. No. You let her think, what? That you'd come back to her eventually? I let her think I'd made a mistake. Ronan's voice was quiet. Because it was easier than admitting the truth. Which was? That I'd chosen you. That I'd always choose you. He stopped. Even if you never chose me back. Elowen's hands were shaking again. She didn't know if it was rage or grief or something else entirely. I need to think, she said. Elowen, no. She held up a hand. You've had 8 years to think about this, to make your choices. I need time. She turned toward the door. Wait. Ronan's voice stopped her. There's something else you need to know. Of course there was. Elowen didn't turn around. What? Your father's debts, the forgeries. I didn't just bury them, I paid them. She turned slowly. What? Every fake investment, every forged note. I tracked down the victims and paid them back quietly, used my own money, routed through shell companies. Made it look like the investments had paid out after all. Why would you? Because they didn't deserve to lose everything because of one man's desperation. Ronan's eyes were steady on hers. And because I didn't want your father's crimes hanging over you forever. Elowen's throat tightened. How much? Does it matter? How much, Ronan? He named a figure that made her knees weak. That's your entire fortune from the northern estates. It was worth it. To buy a wife? To protect you. His voice was fierce now. I don't care what you think of me, Elowen. I don't care if you hate me for keeping secrets or maintaining distance or making choices without consulting you. But don't for 1 second think I didn't sacrifice for you. Don't think I didn't bleed for you. The words hit like physical blows. Elowen stood there, trying to process everything, trying to sort truth from manipulation, fact from fiction. I need air, she said finally. This time, he didn't stop her. She fled the study, the corridor, the entire west wing. Her feet carried her to the one place in the manor that had ever felt like hers. The conservatory at the back of the estate, all glass and greenery and blessed silence. She sank onto a stone bench and let herself shake. The dawn light filtered through the glass roof, painting everything in shades of pink and gold. Beautiful, peaceful, completely at odds with the chaos in her head. Her father had been a criminal, a forger. A man so desperate to maintain appearances that he'd sold his daughter to cover his crimes. And Ronan had wanted her, had sacrificed for her, had kept his distance not from indifference but from some twisted sense of honor. It was too much. She'd spent 8 years building a very specific understanding of her life. She was the unwanted wife, the inconvenient Duchess, the woman who'd been married for money and ignored for convenience. That story made sense. It was clean. She knew her role in it, but this was messy and complicated and full of choices made in shadows, sacrifices made in silence. She didn't know what to do with it. Your Grace? Elowen looked up. Mrs. Davies, the head housekeeper, stood in the conservatory doorway. She was an older woman, gray-haired and stern-faced, who'd been with the Carrick family for decades. I'm fine, Mrs. Davies. You're barefoot and your dress is buttoned wrong. Mrs. Davies moved closer. You're many things, but fine isn't one of them. Despite everything, Elowen almost smiled. I had a difficult night. I heard. Mrs. Davies settled onto the bench beside her. The staff is buzzing about the ball, about what happened. Of course they are. They're also buzzing about the shouting from His Grace's study this morning. Elowen closed her eyes. Wonderful. If I may speak freely, Your Grace. Can I stop you? No? Mrs. Davies folded her hands in her lap. I've worked for Duke Carrick for 23 years, watched him grow from a serious boy into a serious man. And in all that time, I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. He doesn't look at me. He does. You just haven't been looking back. Elowin turned to stare at the housekeeper. What? He watches you, Your Grace. Has since the beginning. At breakfast, when you think he's reading the paper. At dinner, when you're focused on your plate. Every time you enter a room. Mrs. Davies' voice was gentle. I thought you knew. I didn't. Then you're more blind than I gave you credit for. The bluntness startled a laugh out of Elowin. Did you come here to insult me? I came to tell you what I've observed. Mrs. Davies stood. What you do with that information is your choice. But if I may offer one more piece of unsolicited advice. Go ahead. Talk to him. Really talk. Not like strangers maintaining appearances, but like two people trying to find the truth. She moved toward the door. You might be surprised what you learn. She left Elowin alone with the plants and the rising sun, and a head full of questions that had no easy answers. 3 hours later, Elowin was still in the conservatory when she heard footsteps. Not Ronan's heavy tread. Someone lighter, younger. A woman appeared in the doorway. Vivian. Elowin stood immediately. How did you get in here? I told the footman I was expected. Vivian's smile was sharp. He believed me. You need to leave. I will, after we talk. We have nothing to discuss. Don't we? Vivian moved into the conservatory, her scarlet dress from last night replaced with a more subdued gray traveling outfit. I think we have quite a lot to discuss, starting with what you're going to do. About what? About your husband? Vivian's eyes glittered. About this farce of a marriage. About the fact that he doesn't love you and never will. You don't know what he feels. I know him better than you ever will. Vivian moved closer. I know what he sounds like when he laughs, what he looks like when he's happy, She stopped. What he was, before you. Before he married me, you mean? Before he trapped himself in obligation. Vivian's voice was bitter. He was different then, free. And then your father came along with his debts and his desperation, and Ronan, she laughed. Ronan saw an opportunity to be noble, to save someone. He's always had that weakness. Weakness? The need to fix things, to sacrifice himself for others. Vivian's smile was sad now. It's what drove him to marry you. Not love, not even desire. Just his cursed sense of duty. Elowin felt something cold settle in her chest. He told you about the debts. He told me everything, 6 years ago when he came to say goodbye. When he broke my heart to marry you. Vivian's voice cracked. He said he had no choice, that your father had backed him into a corner, that the marriage was necessary to prevent a scandal. That's not the whole truth, isn't it? Vivian tilted her head. What did he tell you? That he wanted you? That he'd chosen you for love? Elowin didn't answer. He's lying, Vivian said softly. Or he's confused. Ronan has always had trouble separating obligation from emotion. He's convinced himself he cares for you because that makes the sacrifice bearable. But it's not real, Elowin. None of it is real. You need to leave now, not until you understand what you're holding on to. Vivian's voice rose. A man who married you out of duty, who keeps you at arm's length because he can't bear to pretend intimacy with someone he was forced to choose. You're his obligation. I was his choice. Then why didn't he choose you last night? The question landed like a slap. Vivian's face went white. He will. Eventually. When he stops playing the noble martyr, he'll realize what he gave up, and he'll come back to me. You're delusional. Am I? Vivian's laugh was sharp. Or am I the only one here willing to face the truth? You're living in a fantasy, Duchess, a pretty cage with a husband who tolerates you at best. I'm offering you freedom. I don't want your freedom. Then you're a fool. Vivian turned toward the door. Enjoy your loveless marriage. Enjoy your cold bed and your silent meals and your husband who looks through you like glass. I'll be waiting for the day he finally breaks. She swept out of the conservatory, leaving Elowin standing alone among the ferns and morning light. Elowin's hands were fists at her sides. Everything Vivian had said was poison, designed to hurt, to undermine, to destroy. But poison only worked if it carried some truth. Did Ronan really want her? Or was he just convinced himself he did to make the sacrifice bearable? Was she really his choice? Or just his obligation dressed up in prettier language? She didn't know, and she was tired of not knowing. Elowen straightened her shoulders, fixed her dress as best she could, and marched back into the manor. She found Ronan in the library this time, surrounded by ledgers and correspondence. He looked up when she entered, something wary in his eyes. "Vivian was here," Elowen said without preamble. Ronan stood immediately. "What?" "She came to tell me you don't really want me, that you married me out of duty and you're confused about your feelings." "That's not— Is it true?" Elowen cut him off. "Any of it?" "No." "How do I know you're not just telling me what I want to hear?" Ronan stared at her for a long moment. Then he moved around the desk, stopping a few feet away from her. "You don't," he said quietly. "You don't know. You have to decide whether to believe me." "That's not fair." "Nothing about this is fair." His voice was rough. "You want proof? Evidence? I can't give you that. I can't reach into my chest and show you what I feel. All I can do is tell you the truth and hope you believe it." "I don't know if I can." "I know." The silence between them was different this time. Not cold, not distant, just heavy, weighted with 8 years of miscommunication and hurt. "I want to believe you," Elowen said finally, "but I don't know how." "Then let me show you." Ronan took a step closer. "Let me prove it." "How?" "I don't know yet." A bitter smile crossed his face. "I'm making this up as I go, but I'm willing to try if you are." Elowen looked at him, really looked, at the tension in his shoulders, the shadows under his eyes, the way his hands were clenched at his sides like he was physically restraining himself from reaching for her. He looked like a man barely holding himself together, just like she felt. "I need conditions," she said. "Anything. No more secrets. No more promises to my father that override my right to know what's happening in my own life." "Agreed. And I want the full truth. About everything. The debts, the forgeries, Vivian, all of it." "You'll have it. Starting with what you haven't told me yet." Ronan's face went carefully blank. "What makes you think—" "Because there's always more with you." Elowen crossed her arms. "So what is it? What else are you hiding?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Your father is dying." The words sucked all the air from the room. "What?" "He's been ill for 6 months, heart condition. The doctors give him maybe a year." Ronan's voice was gentle. "He asked me not to tell you, said he didn't want you to feel obligated to visit, to watch him fade." Elowen's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the nearest chair. "He's dying." "Yes." "And you've known for 6 months?" "Yes." "Were you ever going to tell me?" Ronan crouched in front of her, bringing himself to eye level. "I was trying to honor his wishes, but I should have told you anyway. You deserved to know." Elowen's vision blurred with tears. "I need to see him." "I'll arrange it. Today, if you want." "Yes." The word came out choked. "Now. I need to go now." Ronan stood, already moving toward his desk. "I'll have the carriage prepared. It's a 3-hour ride to You're coming with me." He stopped, turned. "Elowen? No more distance," she said fiercely. "No more handling things separately. If we're going to figure out what this marriage actually is, then we do it together, starting now." Something shifted in Ronan's expression, something that might have been hope. "Together," he repeated. "Together." He nodded once, sharp and decisive. "I'll get my coat." The carriage ride to her father's estate was silent, but it was a different kind of silence. Not the cold absence of 8 years past. Something else. Something tentative and fragile. Elowen sat across from Ronan, watching the countryside roll past the window. Her father was dying. Her marriage was a lie built on secrets and sacrifice. Her entire understanding of her life had been dismantled in the space of 12 hours. And yet, she looked at Ronan. He was staring out his own window, jaw tight, hands clenched on his knees. "Tell me about Vivian," she said. He didn't look at her. "What do you want to know?" "Everything." So he told her. Vivian had been his first love. A whirlwind romance when they were both too young to know better. Passionate, dramatic, destined to burn out. Her family had disapproved. His responsibilities had interfered. They'd broken up and reconciled half a dozen times before finally ending it for good. Or so Ronan had thought. She always believed we'd find our way back to each other, he said quietly. That the timing was just wrong, not the relationship. When I told her I was getting married, He stopped. She didn't take it well. She left society. She said she needed to become someone worthy of me, someone I couldn't refuse. Ronan's voice was bitter. I tried to tell her it wasn't about worth, that I'd made a different choice, but she didn't believe me. Why not? Because I didn't tell her about you. He finally looked at Elowen. I told her the marriage was duty, obligation, a necessary arrangement. I never said... He stopped. Never said what? That I wanted my wife. The confession was quiet. That I'd been thinking about her since the moment we met. That duty was just an excuse to have what I couldn't earn honestly. Elowen's breath caught. The carriage rolled on. 3 hours later, they arrived at Ashford Manor, a much smaller estate than Carrick Manor, showing signs of age and neglect. A servant met them at the door, her face grave. Your Grace, Duchess, Lord Ashford has been asking for you. Elowen's heart clenched. How is he? Weak, but awake. They were led to her father's bedchamber. Elowen stopped outside the door, her hand on the handle. I need to do this alone, she said to Ronan. He nodded. I'll be right here. She pushed open the door. Her father lay in bed looking decades older than she remembered. Gray, thin, his breathing labored. Elowen. His voice was a rasp. You came. You didn't tell me you were ill. She moved to his bedside, fighting tears. I didn't want... He coughed. Didn't want you to feel obligated. I'm your daughter. You're a duchess. He smiled weakly. Above such things now. Elowen sat on the edge of the bed, taking his frail hand in hers. Ronan told me about the debts, the forgeries, all of it. Her father's face crumpled. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Elowen. I never meant... Why didn't you just tell me? Because I was ashamed. Tears leaked from the corners of his eyes. Because I'd failed you, failed our family, and I thought if I could arrange something good for you, by selling me to pay your debts, by giving you a future. Her father's grip tightened weakly. Ronan is a good man. I knew he'd take care of you, keep you safe. He's a stranger who bought a wife he didn't want. He wanted you. Her father's voice was firm despite its weakness. I saw the way he looked at you at that dinner, like you were something precious. I knew then. If I could bind him to you, you'd be protected, always. Elowen's throat was tight. That's not how marriage is supposed to work. Maybe not. Her father coughed again, harder. But it's the best I could do. The only gift I had left to give. A husband who would never hurt you, never abandon you, never let you suffer for my sins. He kept me at a distance for 8 years. Because he's honorable. Her father's eyes were closing now, exhausted. Because he knew you hadn't chosen him freely. Because he wanted to give you space to find your own way. To find my own way to what? But her father had slipped into sleep. Elowen sat there for a long moment, holding his hand, watching him breathe. Then she stood and walked out of the room. Ronan was waiting in the hallway, exactly where she'd left him. How is he? Dying. The word came out flat. And still trying to manage my life from his deathbed. Ronan's expression softened. That's what fathers do. Yours didn't. Mine was dead before he had the chance. Elowen leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. I don't know what to feel. I'm angry at him, grateful to him, furious and heartbroken, and... She stopped. Ronan moved closer, not touching, but near enough that she could feel his warmth. You don't have to know, he said quietly. You can just feel it all. That's not helpful. No, but it's true. Despite everything, Elowen almost smiled. They stood there in the dim hallway of her childhood home, not quite touching, not quite separate. I want to stay tonight, Elowen said finally. With him. In case, of course. You should go back to the manor,
Handle your business. You don't need to. I'm staying. She looked up at him. Ronan, you said together. His eyes were steady on hers. Together means I don't leave you here alone. Something in her chest cracked open. Okay, she whispered. Okay. That night they sat vigil in separate chairs beside her father's bed, watching him sleep, watching him breathe, waiting. Around midnight, her father woke briefly. Ronan, he rasped. Ronan leaned forward. I'm here. Take care of her. Always. No. Her father's hand fumbled for his. Really take care of her. Not just duty. Actually, he coughed. Actually, try. I am trying. Try harder. Her father's eyes were fierce despite their weakness. She deserves everything. I know. Do you? Her father's gaze shifted to Elowen. Tell her. Whatever you've been hiding, whatever you've been too afraid to say. Tell her before it's too late. Then he slipped back into sleep. Elowen and Ronan sat in silence. The candles burned low. Dawn was still hours away. He's right, Ronan said finally. I've been afraid. Of what? Of you. He looked at her across the dimness. Of what happens if I tell you everything and you still choose to leave? Elowen's heart hammered. I'm not going anywhere. You don't know that. Neither do you. She stood, moving around the bed to stand in front of him. But we'll never find out if we keep hiding. Ronan stood too, and suddenly they were very close in the small room. I want you, he said quietly. I've wanted you since that dinner 9 years ago. I've wanted you through every cold breakfast and silent dinner and separate bedroom. I've wanted you so badly it felt like dying, and I've kept that distance because I thought it was the right thing to do, the honorable thing. And now? Now I think honor is just another word for cowardice. Elowen's breath caught. I don't know how to do this, Ronan continued. I don't know how to be a husband to you instead of just a name on a marriage certificate. But I want to learn, if you'll let me. The room was so quiet, just her father's labored breathing and the sound of her own heartbeat. I don't know how either, Elowen whispered. I don't know how to trust you after 8 years of silence, but I want to try. Even knowing what I did, what I paid for you? You didn't pay for me. Her voice was fierce now. You paid my father's debts. You protected me from his crimes. You gave me a life when I would have had nothing. That's not the same thing, isn't it? No. She reached up, touching his face for the first time in 8 years. It's not. Ronan's eyes closed. He leaned into her touch like a man starving. Elowen. Whatever he was going to say was cut off by a horrible rattling sound from the bed. They both turned. Her father's breathing had changed, become irregular, labored. Elowen grabbed his hand. Father? His eyes opened one last time. He looked at her, then at Ronan. Then he smiled and stopped breathing. The silence that followed was absolute. Elowen's hand went slack in her father's. She didn't cry, couldn't. The tears were there, building behind her eyes like a dam about to break. But they wouldn't fall. She just sat there, staring at his face, peaceful now, finally free of pain, and felt nothing and everything at once. Elowen. Ronan's voice was soft beside her. She couldn't answer. He stood, moving around the bed, and gently pulled her to her feet. She let him guide her away from the body that had been her father and was now just empty. Let him lead her out of the room while he called for the servants, his voice low and efficient as he gave instructions about doctors and undertakers and all the grim machinery that follows death. She found herself in the drawing room, sitting in a chair she remembered from childhood. The upholstery was worn now, faded. Everything in this house was faded. Ronan knelt in front of her. Elowen, look at me. She did. His eyes were concerned, careful, like she was made of glass and might shatter. I'm fine, she said. You're not. He's been dying for months. You knew. I should have known too. That's not your fault, isn't it? Her voice cracked. I barely visited. Maybe 5 times in 8 years. I was so angry at him for selling me, I thought. For trapping me in a marriage I didn't understand. And now he's gone and I can't. The tears came then, finally, messy and ugly and unstoppable. Ronan pulled her into his arms without asking permission, and she let herself break against his chest. Let 8 years of anger and loneliness and grief pour out in great shuddering sobs that left her gasping. He held her through it all. Didn't try to shush her or tell her it would be okay. Just held her. When the storm finally passed, Elowen pulled back, wiping her face with shaking hands. "I'm sorry," she said. "Don't be. I got your shirt wet." "I don't care." Ronan's hands were still on her shoulders, steady and warm. "Elowen, you don't have to be strong right now."
Yes, I do. She stood, needing distance, needing to move. There are arrangements to make, the funeral, the estate, his debts. She stopped. Are there more debts? Things you haven't told me about? No. Ronan stood too. Everything was settled years ago. But the estate, it'll need to be, it's yours. Has been since the marriage.
Your father signed it over as part of the arrangement. He paused. He wanted you to have something of your own. Something I couldn't touch. Elowen looked around the faded drawing room, the worn furniture, the paintings that needed cleaning, the whole crumbling legacy of the Ashford name. I don't want it, she said. That's your choice to make. Everything here is, she gestured vaguely, tainted, built on lies and desperation and crimes I didn't even know about until yesterday. It's also your history, your family. My family is dead. The words came out harsh. And the man who raised me was a stranger who thought selling his daughter was an acceptable solution to his problems. He loved you. Love isn't supposed to feel like abandonment. Elowen's voice rose. Love isn't supposed to come with contracts and secrets and... She stopped, breathing hard. Ronan was watching her carefully. What do you want to do? I want to burn it all down. She laughed, sharp and bitter. The estate, the debts, the lies. I want to take everything my father built on fraud and what? And expose it. The idea crystallized as she said it. Every forged document, every fake investment, every person he defrauded, I want it all made public. Ronan went very still. Elowen, he's dead. He can't be prosecuted. But the people he stole from deserve to know the truth. They've already been compensated. I saw to that. By you, anonymously, through shell companies. Elowen turned to face him fully. They think their investments paid out. They think everything was legitimate. They have no idea they were victims of fraud. Because that protects them, protects you. I don't want protection anymore. Her voice was fierce now. I want the truth, all of it, out in the open where everyone can see. That will destroy your reputation. What reputation? I'm already the cold Duchess, the wife her husband ignores, the decoration at parties. She crossed her arms. At least if they're going to whisper about me, it'll be about something real. Ronan's jaw was tight. You don't know what you're asking for. Then explain it to me. He moved to the window, staring out at the overgrown gardens. If you expose your father's crimes publicly, it doesn't just affect you. The Ashford name will be permanently tainted. Any distant relatives, any business associates, anyone connected to your family, they'll all suffer. They should know what they were connected to. And the victims? Ronan turned back to her. Some of them are powerful people who won't appreciate learning they were fooled, that they trusted a forger, that their judgment was so poor they lost money to a scheme. That's not my fault? No, but they'll blame you anyway. They'll say you knew, that you benefited, that you're just as guilty as your father. Let them. Elowen, I'm tired of secrets, Ronan. She moved toward him. Tired of living in shadows? Of maintaining pretty lies to protect people who don't deserve protection. My father was a criminal. I'm the daughter of a criminal. If that destroys my standing in society, so be it. It'll destroy more than that. His voice was quiet, dangerous. There are people, powerful people, who have reasons to keep your father's crimes buried. People who benefited from the chaos he created, who swooped in to buy distressed properties when his victims needed quick cash. People who won't appreciate you dragging everything back into the light. Who? Ronan hesitated. Who, Ronan? Lord Chancellor Pemberton, for one. He bought 3 estates from men your father defrauded, paid half their value because the sellers were desperate. If it comes out that those sales were driven by fraud, he'd have to give them back or face questions about whether he knew, whether he profited knowingly from criminal activity. Ronan's expression was grim. Pemberton is one of the most powerful men in the kingdom. He advises the crown. He controls trade policy, and he will not take kindly to being exposed. Elowin's heart was hammering. Are you saying he'll come after me? I'm saying he'll destroy you if you give him cause. And exposing this will give him cause. Then he should have been more careful about his business dealings. This isn't a game, Elowin. I know that. She squared her shoulders. But I'm done being afraid, done hiding. If powerful men want to come for me, let them. At least I'll face them honestly. Ronan stared at her for a long moment. Something shifted in his expression, surprise maybe, or respect. You're serious about this? Completely. Even knowing it could cost you everything?
What do I have to lose? A position in society that was built on lies? A marriage that was a transaction?
She stopped. Unless what? Unless exposing this hurts you. Elowin looked at him directly. If I do this, it reflects on you too. The Duke who married a criminal's daughter, who covered up fraud to protect his wife. You'd be questioned, investigated, maybe worse. I can handle it. Can you? Really? She moved closer. Because I need to know, Ronan. I need to know if you're willing to stand with me when this blows up. Or if you'll do what you've always done, keep your distance and protect yourself. The words hung between them like a challenge. Ronan's hands clenched at his sides. That's not fair. Neither is any of this. I kept distance to protect you. You kept distance to protect yourself. Elowin's voice was sharp now. From having to feel anything. From having to acknowledge what you'd done. You bought a wife and then couldn't stand to look at what you'd purchased. That's not true. Then prove it. She stepped closer. Stand with me. Publicly. When I expose my father's crimes and society turns against me, don't hide in your study and pretend we're strangers. Don't issue careful statements about how you were deceived too. Actually be my husband. Ronan's eyes flashed. You think I'd abandon you? I think you've been abandoning me for 8 years. I was giving you space. I didn't want space. The words exploded out of her. I wanted a partner, someone who saw me, who talked to me, who... She stopped, breathing hard. But you were too busy being noble and self-sacrificing to notice I was drowning. I noticed. His voice was low, rough. I noticed everything, every time you looked at me hoping for something I didn't know how to give. Every time you tried to start a conversation and I shut it down because I was afraid if I let you in, I'd never be able to let you go. I noticed, Elowin, and it killed me. The confession stopped her cold. Then why? Because I'm a coward. Ronan's laugh was bitter. You want the truth? There it is. I'm a coward who'd rather suffer in silence than risk being rejected by the one person who... He stopped. Who what? Who matters? The words came out quiet, defeated. You're the only person who's ever mattered, and I've spent 8 years too terrified to do anything about it. Elowin's throat was tight. I can't do this right now. I know. My father just died, and I'm about to blow up my entire life, and I can't also deal with you finally deciding to have feelings. I understand. Do you? She turned away, moving back toward the door. Because I don't think you do. I don't think you understand what you're asking of me. I'm not asking anything. You're asking me to believe you, to trust that this time, you'll actually be there, and I don't know if I can. Her voice cracked. I don't know if I have anything left to give you. She left the room before he could respond. The next 3 days were a blur of arrangements and condolences and cold efficiency. The funeral was small. Her father hadn't had many friends left after his financial collapse. A handful of distant relatives, some local merchants who'd known him before the scandal. Ronan stood beside her through it all, silent and solid, a presence she was too numb to fully process. They returned to Carrick Manor on the 4th day. Elowin went straight to her rooms and began pulling out documents. Everything she had about her father's crimes, everything Ronan had collected. She spread them across her sitting room floor, organizing them into categories: forged investments, falsified documents, victims who'd been compensated. She was creating a map of her father's fraud, a complete picture to present to whom? The authorities would prosecute if they could, but her father was dead. The courts couldn't touch him. But they could touch his legacy, could expose what he'd done, could force accountability even if punishment was no longer possible. There was a knock at her door. "Come in," she called without looking up. Ronan entered, carrying a folder of his own. "You'll need these too." He set them down beside her collection. More documents. More evidence. "You're helping me," she said. "Did you think I wouldn't? I thought you'd try to stop me. I thought about it." Ronan settled into a chair nearby. "But then I realized something." "What?" "You're right." He met her eyes. "About all of it. The secrets, the distance, the cowardice. You're right. And I've been wrong. And if you want to burn everything down to find something real," he paused, "then I'll hand you the matches." Elowin's hand stilled on the papers. "Even if it destroys us both? Especially then." His voice was quiet but firm. "Because maybe that's what we need. To destroy what we were so we can build something true." She wanted to believe him, wanted so badly to trust that this time, this moment, he meant what he said. But trust was earned, and he hadn't earned it yet. "I'm taking this to the regional council," she said, turning back to her documents. "They have jurisdiction over fraud cases. They can order a public investigation even if there's no one left to prosecute. That'll take weeks to arrange, months maybe. Then I'll wait. Or," Ronan leaned forward, "you could petition for an emergency hearing." "On what grounds?" "Public interest, ongoing harm, the fact that stolen money is still out there in the form of property bought with fraud proceeds." He gestured to the documents. "If you frame it right, if you make the case that justice requires immediate transparency, they'll grant you a hearing within days." Elowin looked up sharply. "You've done this before." "Once. Different situation, but the same principle." His expression was unreadable. "I know how the council works, how to navigate their politics. If you want this done quickly, I can help." "Why would you want it done quickly?" "Because the longer we wait, the more time powerful people have to bury evidence, to pressure witnesses, to make this go away." Ronan's voice was hard now. "If we're doing this, we do it fast and loud before anyone can stop us." "We." He'd said we. "What do I need to do?" Elowin asked. "Write a petition. Lay out the facts clearly and without emotion. Request a public hearing on the grounds of," he thought for a moment, "transparency in matters of fraud affecting multiple noble families and merchant interests. Make it about protecting future victims, not punishing your father." "But it is about punishing him. The council doesn't care about punishment. They care about order, about maintaining trust in the system." Ronan stood, moving to her desk. "Give them a way to look competent and thorough, and they'll give you your hearing." Elowin watched him pull out fresh paper, uncap an inkwell. He moved with purpose now, all hesitation gone. "You're different," she said. He glanced back. "How so?" "Decisive. Like you've finally picked a side." "I picked my side 8 years ago." His voice was quiet. "I'm just done pretending otherwise." They worked through the night, drafting the petition, gathering evidence, organizing everything into a coherent narrative. Ronan knew exactly how to phrase things, which details to emphasize, which to downplay. By dawn, they had a document that was precise, damning, and impossible to ignore. "This will work," Ronan said, reading it over one final time. "They'll have to grant the hearing. And then what?" "Then you testify. In front of the council, in front of witnesses, in front of anyone who wants to attend." He set down the petition. "You tell them everything, and you let the consequences fall where they may." Elowin's stomach churned. "I've never spoken publicly before. Not like that." "I know. What if I freeze? What if I can't?" "You will." Ronan's voice was certain. "You're stronger than you think." "How do you know?" "Because you're still here. After 8 years of the worst marriage I could have inflicted on someone, you're still standing, still fighting." He moved closer. "Most people would have broken. You're not most people." The words settled over her like a weight, like a responsibility. "When do we submit it?" she asked. "Tomorrow, first thing." Ronan hesitated. "Elowin, once we do this, there's no going back. Are you certain?"
Was she?
This would destroy her father's memory, would expose her as the daughter of a criminal, would make her a target for powerful people who wanted the past to stay buried. But it would also be the truth. Finally. Completely. No more secrets, no more shadows. I'm certain, she said. Ronan nodded once. Then we'll do it together. The next morning, they rode to the regional council chambers in the same carriage. Separate seats, but side by side. The council clerk took their petition with barely concealed surprise. A duchess filing a complaint against her own deceased father, it was unprecedented. This will be reviewed by the council chair, the clerk said carefully. You should expect a response within— I expect a response today, Elowen said. Her voice came out stronger than she felt. This is a matter of public interest requiring immediate attention. The clerk blinked, looked at Ronan, who nodded confirmation. I'll inform the chair immediately, Your Grace. They waited in an anteroom. Minutes stretched into an hour, then 2. Elowen's hands wouldn't stop shaking. What if they refuse? She asked quietly. They won't. But if they do, then we make it public anyway. Take it to the newspapers. Force their hand. Ronan's voice was calm. One way or another, this gets exposed. The door opened. The clerk returned, looking pale. The council chair will see you now. They were led into a vast chamber lined with dark wood and darker portraits. 5 council members sat at a curved bench, with Lord Chancellor Pemberton at the center. Elowen's heart dropped. Pemberton was the one Ronan had warned her about, the one who'd profited from her father's crimes, and now he was the one who'd decide whether her petition was heard. Duchess Carrick. Pemberton's voice was smooth, cold. This is quite the petition you've filed. It's a request for transparency, Lord Chancellor. It's an accusation against a dead man who cannot defend himself. It's an accounting of crimes that affected multiple families. Elowen kept her voice steady. Crimes that were covered up to protect certain interests. Pemberton's eyes narrowed. What interests would those be? Interests that benefited from the chaos my father created. She met his gaze directly. Interests that bought property at reduced prices from desperate men who'd lost money to fraud. The chamber went very quiet. Are you accusing this council of impropriety, Duchess? I'm requesting an investigation into fraud. If that investigation reveals impropriety, she paused, then the council should address it. One of the other council members leaned forward. Lord Chancellor, if there are legitimate questions about fraud affecting noble families— There are no questions, Pemberton cut him off. Lord Ashford's financial troubles were well documented. He made poor investments. There was no fraud. Then an investigation will confirm that, Elowen said, and my father's reputation can be cleared through proper channels rather than whispers. It was a trap, and Pemberton knew it. If he denied the investigation, it looked like a cover-up. If he granted it, his own dealings would be scrutinized. His face was stone. This council does not appreciate being manipulated, Duchess. This council serves the public interest, Ronan said quietly, his first word since entering the chamber. And the public interest requires transparency. Pemberton's gaze shifted to him. Duke Carrick, how interesting that you support your wife in this matter, given that you're the one who helped bury the initial scandal. I compensated victims privately to avoid unnecessary pain, Ronan said, but the Duchess is right. Private compensation isn't the same as public accountability. And you're willing to have your own actions investigated? Absolutely. The other council members were watching now, sensing blood in the water. Pemberton sat back, his expression calculating. Very well. The council will grant a preliminary hearing in 3 days' time. Duchess Carrick, you will present your evidence. We will determine if a full investigation is warranted. 3 days, Elowen repeated. Is that a problem? No, Lord Chancellor. Good. Pemberton's smile was sharp. I look forward to your testimony. They were dismissed. Outside the council chambers, Elowen's legs nearly gave out. Ronan caught her elbow, steadying her. You did well, he said. He's going to destroy me. He's going to try. Ronan guided her toward their carriage, which means we need to be ready. Ready how? By making sure your testimony is airtight, by anticipating every question, every attack, by— He stopped as a figure stepped out from the shadows of the council building. Vivienne. She looked different than she had at the ball. Harder. Her eyes glittered with something dangerous.
Well, she said, this is quite the show you're putting on. What do you want, Vivienne? Ronan's voice was tired. To offer a warning. She looked at Elowen. You're making powerful enemies, Duchess. People who will not hesitate to destroy you. Let them try. Oh, they will. Vivienne's smile was bitter. Pemberton is already gathering ammunition, digging into your past, your marriage, looking for anything he can use to discredit you. How do you know that? Ronan demanded. Because he came to me. Vivienne's gaze was steady. Asked me questions about your marriage, about why it's been so cold, about whether the Duchess might have reasons to want revenge on her husband. Elowen's blood ran cold. What did you tell him? Nothing. Yet. Vivienne tilted her head. But I could. I could tell him about the distance between you, about how Ronan only chose you publicly after I forced his hand. I could paint a picture of a woman scorned, desperate to lash out however she can. That's not what this is, Elowen said. Isn't it? Vivienne moved closer. You're exposing your dead father's crimes, dragging your husband into an investigation, making yourself a martyr for transparency. It looks an awful lot like revenge from where I'm standing. Then you're not looking very carefully. Maybe not. Vivienne's voice softened slightly. Or maybe I'm the only one who sees clearly. You're going to lose everything, Elowen. Your reputation, your position, possibly your marriage. And for what? To prove a point? To feel righteous? To tell the truth. The truth is overrated. Vivienne glanced at Ronan. Tell her what the truth cost you 6 years ago. Ronan's jaw was tight. Vivienne, he told me the truth, Vivienne said to Elowen, about duty and obligation and necessary arrangements, and it destroyed me. Broke me so completely it took 6 years to put myself back together. Is that what you want? To be broken by truth? I'm already broken, Elowen said quietly. At least this way, I'll know why. Vivienne stared at her for a long moment. Then she laughed, sharp and bitter. You're either very brave or very stupid. I haven't decided which. She turned to leave, then stopped. Pemberton will come after you at the hearing. He'll twist everything, make you look unstable or vindictive or both. And when he's done, she looked back. Ronan will have to choose. Stand with you and lose everything, or step back and save himself. He's already chosen, Elowen said. Has he? Vivienne's eyes were sad now. Or has he just chosen the path of least resistance again? We'll see what happens when the real cost becomes clear. She walked away, disappearing into the afternoon crowds. Elowen turned to Ronan. Is she right? About what? About you choosing the path of least resistance. Ronan's expression was unreadable. 3 days ago, maybe. But not anymore. How do I know that? You don't. He opened the carriage door for her. You'll just have to trust me. Trust. That word again. She climbed into the carriage, and they rode back to the manor in silence. 3 days to prepare. 3 days to build a case that would either expose corruption or destroy her completely. 3 days to figure out if the man beside her was truly her partner or just another person using her for his own ends. That night, Elowen couldn't sleep. She paced her rooms, going over her testimony, anticipating Pemberton's attacks. Around midnight, there was a soft knock at her door. She opened it to find Ronan standing there, still dressed, looking as exhausted as she felt. Can't sleep either? He asked. No? May I come in? She hesitated, then stepped aside. He entered her rooms for the first time in 8 years, looked around at the books she'd collected, the writing desk covered in notes, the evidence of a life lived entirely separate from his. I should have asked before, he said quietly. Should have tried to know you. Really know you. Why didn't you? Because I was afraid you'd see through me. See that I wasn't the noble duke everyone thought. Just a man who'd manipulated circumstances to get what he wanted. He turned to face her. I was afraid you'd hate me for it. I did hate you, Elowen said. For a long time. Maybe I still do, a little. That's fair. But I also... She stopped, unsure how to finish. Also what? Also wonder what we could have been. If you'd been honest from the start. If we'd built something real instead of this performance.
Ronan moved closer. We still could. Could we? Really? Elowen looked at him directly. After 8 years of distance and lies and separate lives, after I've just set fire to any hope of normalcy we might have had, you think we can just, start over?
No. His voice was quiet. I think we have to start from here, from this mess, from the truth of what we are and what we've done to each other. And what are we? Two people who've been circling each other for 8 years, too afraid to actually connect. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his hand cupped her face. Two people who might still have a chance if we're brave enough to take it. Elowen's breath caught. She should step back, should maintain the distance that had kept her safe all these years. Instead, she leaned into his touch. I'm terrified, she whispered. So am I. Of what? Of losing you before I ever really had you. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. Of finally being honest and discovering it's too late. It might be. I know. He leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching hers. But I'd rather know for certain than spend another 8 years wondering. The space between them was nothing now. A breath. A heartbeat. Elowen could smell him, soap and leather and something distinctly him, could feel the warmth radiating from his body, could see the vulnerability in his eyes that he'd kept hidden for so long. If I do this, she said quietly, if I let you in, you don't get to run when it gets hard. You don't get to retreat to your study and pretend we're strangers again. I won't. Promise me, Ronan. Actually promise. I promise. His voice was fierce. I promise I will stand with you through whatever comes. At the hearing, after, always. I promise. She kissed him. It wasn't gentle or romantic or any of the things a first kiss should be. It was desperate and messy, and 8 years of frustration and longing compressed into a single moment. He responded immediately, pulling her closer, his hands tangling in her hair. She grabbed his shirt, holding on like he might disappear if she let go. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ronan pressed his forehead against hers. I've wanted to do that since the day we met, he said. You should have. I should have done a lot of things differently. Yes. Elowen's hands were still fisted in his shirt. You should have. They stood there, holding each other in the quiet of her rooms, and for the first time in 8 years, Elowen felt like she might actually be married to someone real. The feeling lasted exactly 12 hours. The next morning, a letter arrived by urgent courier. Ronan opened it at breakfast, his expression going from neutral to stone in seconds. What is it? Elowen asked. He handed her the letter without a word. It was from Lord Chancellor Pemberton's office. Official council stationery. Very formal language. The hearing had been moved up. Not in 3 days. Tomorrow. He's not giving us time to prepare, Elowen said. No. Ronan's voice was grim. He's forcing us to scramble, to make mistakes. Can he do that? He's the council chair. He can do whatever he wants. Elowen set down the letter with shaking hands. Tomorrow. She had to stand before the council tomorrow and defend her decision, her evidence, her entire position against one of the most powerful men in the kingdom. And she wasn't ready. I can't do this, she said. Yes, you can. Ronan, I've never testified before. I've never even spoken at a council session. And now I have to, in front of everyone, you'll tell the truth. He reached across the table, taking her hand. That's all you have to do. Tell the truth, and don't let them shake you. Easy for you to say. It's not easy at all. His grip tightened. But it's necessary, and you're strong enough. I know you are. Elowen wanted to believe him, wanted to feel the certainty he was projecting, but all she felt was terror. They spent the rest of the day in frantic preparation, going over evidence, rehearsing testimony, anticipating questions. Ronan drilled her relentlessly, playing the role of hostile council member, attacking from every angle. By nightfall, Elowen's head was pounding and her voice was hoarse. We should stop, Ronan said finally. You need rest. I need to be ready. You are ready. He stood, moving to where she sat surrounded by papers. Elowen, you could prepare for a year and it wouldn't change what happens tomorrow. Pemberton is going to attack. You're going to defend, and either the council will see the truth or they won't.
That's not reassuring. It's realistic. He pulled her to her feet. Come on. You need sleep. She let him guide her toward the door, too exhausted to argue. They walked through the dark corridors of the manor together, their footsteps echoing on marble. When they reached the hallway where their wings diverged, hers to the east, his to the west, Ronan stopped. Stay with me tonight, he said quietly. Elowyn's heart stuttered. Ronan, not for... He stopped. Just to sleep. I don't want you alone tonight, not before tomorrow. She should say no. Should maintain some distance, some protection. But the thought of facing her empty rooms, her racing thoughts, the crushing weight of what was coming. Okay, she whispered. His rooms were different than hers, darker, heavier furniture, thick curtains, shelves lined with books and maps, and the accumulated weight of ducal responsibility. He found her a nightgown, one of his shirts, really, soft and worn. Left her to change while he did the same in his dressing room. When he emerged, they stood on opposite sides of the enormous bed, both suddenly uncertain. I don't, Elowyn started. We'll just sleep, Ronan said. I promise. They climbed into bed from opposite sides. The mattress was bigger than hers, the blankets heavier. She lay rigid on her side, hyper-aware of his presence mere feet away. Elowyn? Ronan said into the darkness. Yes? Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever the council decides, I meant what I said. I'm with you. I know. She did know, finally. Ronan? Yes? I'm glad you chose me, at the ball, even if it took 8 years. She heard him shift, felt the mattress dip as he moved closer. I chose you the day I met you, he said quietly. Everything since has just been me trying to deserve that choice. Elowyn rolled toward him. In the darkness, she could barely see his face, but she could feel his warmth, his presence. You don't have to deserve it, she said. You just have to be honest. I'm trying. I know. She reached out, found his hand. We'll figure this out. Whatever happens tomorrow, we'll figure it out together. His fingers laced with hers. Together. She fell asleep like that, holding his hand, feeling less alone than she had in 8 years. The council chambers were packed. Elowyn hadn't expected an audience. She'd thought the hearing would be private, quiet, a formality before the real investigation began. Instead, there were dozens of people crowding the gallery. Nobles, merchants, journalists, all there to watch the Duchess Carrick accuse her dead father of fraud. Pemberton had made sure it was a spectacle. Ronan sat in the front row, his face carefully neutral. Their eyes met briefly as she entered. He nodded once, steady, certain. She took her place at the witness stand. The council members filed in, Pemberton at the center, flanked by 4 others who looked varying degrees of curious and uncomfortable. Duchess Carrick, Pemberton began, his voice carrying through the chamber. You've made very serious accusations. Before we proceed, I want to be clear about what's at stake. You are claiming your father, Lord Ashford, committed fraud on a massive scale. You are, by extension, admitting that you are the daughter of a criminal. Do you understand the implications? I do, Lord Chancellor. And you wish to proceed? I do. Very well. Pemberton settled back in his chair. Present your evidence. Elowyn took a breath and began. She laid out everything, the forged documents, the fake investments, the victims who'd lost money. She presented the evidence methodically, clearly, exactly as she and Ronan had rehearsed. The chamber was silent except for her voice. When she finished, Pemberton leaned forward. This is quite the collection of documents, Duchess. Where did you obtain them? From my father's estate, and from my husband's private files. Your husband's files? Pemberton's smile was thin. Duke Carrick, you've been aware of this fraud for how long? Ronan stood. 8 years, Lord Chancellor. A murmur ran through the gallery. 8 years, Pemberton repeated, and in that time you chose to compensate victims privately rather than report the crimes to proper authorities. Why? To protect the victims from further harm. Public exposure would have served justice, Pemberton cut him off. Instead, you chose to bury the crimes, to marry the criminal's daughter and hide her father's sins. His gaze shifted back to Elowyn. Tell me, Duchess, did you know about the fraud when you married Duke Carrick?
No. Are you certain? Because from where I'm sitting, this looks like a conspiracy. A father commits fraud, a duke helps him cover it up, and the daughter serves as convenient collateral. Very tidy.
That's not what happened, Elowen said. Then what did happen? Pemberton's voice was sharp now. Why would Duke Carrick marry so far beneath his station unless there was something to gain? Why would he spend a fortune compensating fraud victims unless he was complicit? Why would you, the daughter, suddenly decide to expose everything now, 8 years later, conveniently after your father's death when he can't defend himself? Each question landed like a blow.
I didn't know, Elowen repeated. I learned the truth after my father died, and I'm exposing it because it's right. Or because you're angry. Angry at your father for his crimes, angry at your husband for his distance, angry at a world that trapped you in a loveless marriage. Pemberton's eyes glittered. This isn't about justice, Duchess. This is about revenge. No.
We have testimony, Pemberton continued, from Lady Vivian Harcourt. She describes a marriage that was cold from the start. A husband who ignored his wife. A wife who grew increasingly bitter and resentful. She suggests, quite credibly, that this entire petition is an attempt to lash out at the man who bought you like property. The chamber erupted in whispers. Elowen's vision narrowed. Vivian had told him, had given Pemberton exactly the ammunition he needed. That's a lie, she said. Is it? Pemberton pulled out a document. Lady Harcourt was very specific. She describes a public confrontation at the Ashford Ball where Duke Carrick was forced to choose between her and you. She describes your humiliation, your rage. She describes, he looked up, a woman desperate enough to destroy her own reputation just to hurt the man who wronged her. I'm not trying to hurt anyone. I'm trying to expose fraud. You're trying to destroy your husband's reputation because he never loved you. Pemberton's voice rang through the chamber. You're using your father's crimes as a weapon against a man who had the misfortune to marry you, and you're asking this council to validate your vendetta by launching an investigation that will serve no purpose but to humiliate and damage. The gallery was in chaos now, voices rising, people shouting questions. Elowen felt like the walls were closing in. That's not true, she said, but her voice was lost in the noise. Order! Pemberton slammed his gavel. Order in this chamber! The noise died down. Pemberton fixed Elowen with a cold stare. Unless you can provide evidence, actual evidence, that this petition is motivated by something other than personal grievance, I see no reason for this council to pursue further investigation. The matter is closed. No. The word came from the gallery. Everyone turned. Ronan stood, his expression carved from stone. Duke Carrick, Pemberton said dangerously, you are not recognized to speak. Then recognize me. Ronan's voice cut through the chamber. Because I have evidence that Lord Chancellor Pemberton himself profited from Lord Ashford's fraud. Evidence that he knowingly bought property from desperate men at criminally low prices. Evidence that he has been actively suppressing investigation into these crimes to protect his own interests. The chamber exploded. Pemberton's face went white, then red. You will sit down, Duke Carrick, or I will have you removed from these chambers. On what authority? Ronan didn't move. The authority of a council chair who's been profiting from fraud? The authority of a man who spent 8 years making sure Lord Ashford's crimes stayed buried so his own wouldn't surface? This is slander. It's documentation. Ronan pulled a folder from inside his coat. 3 estates, Blackwood Manor, the Riverside Properties, and the Thornhill Holdings. All purchased by you, Lord Chancellor, within 6 months of Lord Ashford's victims becoming desperate for cash. All bought at 40 to 60% below market value. One of the other council members, Lord Hastings, an older man with sharp eyes, leaned forward. Lord Chancellor, is this true? I made legitimate business purchases. From men who just lost everything to fraud, Ronan continued. Men who were so desperate they'd sell at any price. Men who had no idea their losses weren't legitimate investments gone bad, but deliberate criminal acts. He moved down the gallery aisle toward the council bench. You knew. You had to know. The timing was too perfect. The opportunities too convenient. I knew nothing of any fraud.
Then why did you fight so hard against this investigation? Ronan reached the witness stand where Elowen still stood, frozen. He set the folder on the railing. Why move the hearing up to catch us unprepared?
Why bring in Lady Harcourt to discredit my wife? Why turn this into a spectacle instead of a legitimate inquiry? The chamber had gone dead silent. Every eye was on Pemberton now.
The Lord Chancellor's hands were clenched on his gavel. Duke Carrick, you are making very serious accusations without evidence. I have the evidence. Ronan opened the folder. Purchase agreements showing you bought Blackwood Manor from Lord Weatherby for $30,000 when it was worth $70. Riverside from Lord March for $25 when it was worth $55. And Thornhill, he pulled out a document, from Lord Ashford's own solicitor, who was liquidating assets to cover debts. You paid $18,000 for property worth $42. That's business. Properties in distress sell for less. Not 60% less, not unless the buyer knows something the seller doesn't. Ronan's voice was hard now. Not unless the buyer knows the seller is desperate because of fraud and that the desperation can be exploited. Lord Hastings stood. Lord Chancellor, I move that we hear this evidence formally. Denied. Pemberton's voice was sharp. This is completely improper. Is it? Another council member rose, Lady Blackwell, the only woman on the council. Because it seems quite relevant to the matter at hand. If you profited from the very fraud we're investigating, your objectivity is compromised. I did not profit from fraud. You profited from its consequences, Ronan said quietly, which amounts to the same thing. Pemberton's jaw worked. He looked like a man watching his world collapse in real time. This is a conspiracy, he said finally. Duke Carrick and his wife working together to deflect attention from their own complicity by attacking me. My complicity? Ronan's laugh was sharp. I spent my own fortune compensating fraud victims. What did you spend your fortune on, Lord Chancellor? Oh, right, property you bought from those same victims at criminal prices. The gallery erupted again. Journalists were scribbling frantically. Nobles were whispering, faces shocked or gleeful depending on their relationship with Pemberton. Elowen found her voice. The evidence is all there, Lord Chancellor. Purchase dates, prices, seller circumstances. If you have an innocent explanation, now would be the time to provide it. Pemberton stared at her. For the first time since the hearing began, he looked uncertain. He started. You can't, Elowen said. Her heart was hammering, but her voice was steady. Because there is no innocent explanation. You saw an opportunity in other people's suffering and you took it, just like my father saw opportunities in other people's trust and took those. The only difference is he's dead and you're sitting in judgment. The Duchess is right. Lord Hastings' voice cut through the noise. Lord Chancellor, you need to recuse yourself from this matter immediately. I will not. You will, or I'll call for a formal vote of no confidence. Hastings looked at the other council members. All in favor? 3 hands went up immediately. Only Pemberton's ally, Lord Greaves, abstained. Pemberton's face was stone. This is highly irregular. So is a council chair with undisclosed conflicts of interest presiding over a fraud investigation. Lady Blackwell's voice was crisp. Step down, Lord Chancellor. We'll handle this matter appropriately. The standoff lasted perhaps 10 seconds, though it felt like hours. Then Pemberton stood. He gathered his papers with shaking hands, his face a mask of barely controlled rage. This isn't over, he said quietly. To the room, to Elowen, to Ronan. You think you've won something here today. You haven't. He walked out of the chamber, his footsteps echoing. The moment the door closed behind him, the gallery exploded into chaos. Nobles shouting questions, journalists racing for exits to file their reports, council members conferring in urgent whispers. Lord Hastings banged the gavel. Order! We will have order! It took several minutes for the noise to die down. Hastings looked at Elowen. Duchess Carrick, this council owes you an apology. Your petition was legitimate, and it was handled with bias and impropriety. We will be launching a full investigation into both Lord Ashford's fraud and Lord Chancellor Pemberton's subsequent property purchases. Elowen's knees nearly gave out. Thank you, Lord Hastings. Don't thank me yet. An investigation doesn't guarantee any particular outcome. But his eyes were kind. However, I can promise it will be conducted fairly, without interference. That's all I'm asking for. Hastings nodded. Then he looked at Ronan, who'd moved to stand beside Elowen. Duke Carrick, your timing was impeccable. One might almost think you planned to reveal this information at the most dramatic moment possible. One might think that, Ronan agreed. Did you have this evidence before today? Yes. Why not include it in the original petition? Because I needed Pemberton to show his hand first. Ronan's voice was calm. If I'd accused him from the start, he could have claimed ignorance, launched a counter-investigation, buried everything in procedure. But once he committed to attacking my wife publicly, once he revealed his bias, he paused. Then his denials became impossible to believe. Hastings studied him for a long moment. You played a dangerous game, Duke. My wife played a dangerous game by filing this petition at all. I just made sure she didn't play it alone. Something shifted in the council members' expressions, a kind of recognition, maybe, or respect. The hearing is adjourned, Hastings said. We'll reconvene in 1 week to establish parameters for the investigation. Duchess, Duke, you're both dismissed. Elwyn and Ronan left the chamber together. The hallway outside was packed with people, nobles trying to ask questions, journalists shouting for comments, curious onlookers straining to see. Ronan took her hand, actually took it, right there in public, and led her through the crowd like he was parting a sea. No one had ever seen Duke Carrick hold his wife's hand before. The whispers followed them all the way to their carriage. Once inside, doors closed. Finally alone, Elwyn started shaking. It's done, she said. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears. It's actually done. The first part is done. Ronan was watching her carefully. There's still the investigation, but we did it. She looked at him. You did it. That evidence about Pemberton, when did you? I've been collecting it for 3 years. Ronan's expression was unreadable. Since I realized he'd been circling the Ashford properties like a vulture, I knew eventually it would matter. You never told me. I wasn't sure I'd ever use it. Pemberton was one of the most powerful men in the kingdom. Taking him on meant risking everything. He paused, until you decided to risk everything anyway. Then it became easy. Elwyn's throat was tight. You could have let me fail, could have stayed silent and let Pemberton destroy my petition. It would have been safer. Safer for who? For you. Your position, your reputation, none of that matters without you. The words came out quiet but certain. I told you I'd stand with you. I meant it. The carriage rattled through city streets. Elwyn could hear the shouts of newspaper boys already hawking early editions about the scandal at the council chambers. What happens now? She asked. Now the investigation proceeds. They'll dig into your father's records, interview victims, examine Pemberton's purchases. It'll take weeks, maybe months. And we just wait? We live our lives. Ronan reached across the carriage, taking her hand again. Together. Actually together, not the performance we've been giving for 8 years. I don't know how to do that. Neither do I. His thumb brushed over her knuckles. But we'll figure it out. The carriage pulled up to Carrick Manor. They climbed out, still holding hands, and walked into the house together. The staff was lined up in the entrance hall. They'd clearly heard the news already, servants' gossip being faster than any newspaper. Mrs. Davies stepped forward. Your Grace, Duke Carrick, the household wishes to express— Later, Mrs. Davies, Ronan said gently. Right now, we need privacy. Yes, Your Grace. Mrs. Davies nodded crisply. The staff will make themselves scarce. She ushered everyone away, leaving Elwyn and Ronan alone in the vast entrance hall. They stood there for a moment, not quite sure what came next. I need air, Elwyn said finally. The conservatory? Yes. They walked there together, through corridors that felt different now somehow. Less like a mausoleum, more like a home. The conservatory was warm and green and blessedly quiet. Elwyn sank onto the same stone bench where Mrs. Davies had found her days ago. Days. It had only been days since the ball, since her father's death, since her entire world had been torn apart and rebuilt. Are you all right? Ronan asked, sitting beside her. I don't know. Elwyn looked at her hands. They were still shaking. I keep thinking about what Pemberton said, about revenge, about me being angry and vindictive. He was trying to discredit you. But what if he was right? She looked up at Ronan. What if part of me did want to hurt someone? To make someone pay for 8 years of— She stopped. Of what? Of loneliness. The word came out broken. 8 years of living with someone who wouldn't look at me, wouldn't talk to me, wouldn't... Her voice cracked. I was so lonely, Ronan, and maybe part of me did want to expose everything just to make you feel something. Anything. Ronan was quiet for a long moment. You would have been justified, he said finally. If that had been your motivation, you would have been completely justified. I made you lonely. I did that. And if you wanted to hurt me for it, he stopped. I would have deserved it. That's not the point. Then what is? The point is, I don't want to be someone driven by revenge. I don't want to be so damaged by the past that I can't... She struggled for words. That I can't move forward. You're not damaged. I am, though. Elowyn's voice was quiet. We both are. 8 years of living like strangers damaged us both. And I don't know if we can undo that. Ronan shifted closer. What if we don't undo it? What? What if we don't try to erase the past 8 years? What if we just acknowledge them? Accept that they happened, that they changed us, and build something new anyway? Is that possible? I don't know. His hand found hers again. But I'd like to find out. Elowyn looked at their joined hands. His were larger than hers, calloused from writing. She'd never really noticed before, had never let herself look closely enough. I'm still angry at you, she said. I know. And I don't trust you completely. I know that too. But I want to. She met his eyes. I want to trust you. I want to believe this is real, and not just another performance for a different audience. It's real. Ronan's voice was rough. Everything I said in that chamber, everything I've said to you since your father died, it's all real. I'm done performing. Prove it. How? Elowyn thought for a moment, then, tell me something you've never told anyone, something true and ugly and completely honest. Ronan's jaw tightened. Elowyn, you want me to trust you? Then trust me first. Give me something real. He was silent for so long she thought he might refuse. Then, I was relieved when Vivian left 6 years ago. Elowyn blinked. What? You wanted ugly truth? There it is. Ronan's voice was flat. When Vivian disappeared from society after I told her about our marriage, part of me was relieved, because it meant I didn't have to keep pretending I still cared about her. Didn't have to keep feeling guilty for choosing duty over love when really... He stopped. Really what? Really, I'd already fallen for someone else and was just too much of a coward to admit it. He looked at her directly. I let Vivian think I was sacrificing our relationship for obligation. Let her make herself into someone worthy of me for 6 years. And I never corrected her because it was easier than admitting I'd moved on the moment I met you. The confession landed heavily between them. That's... Elowyn didn't know what to say. Ugly. Selfish. The actions of a coward. Ronan's smile was bitter. I told you I wasn't noble. I just hide it better than most. Why tell me now? Because you asked for truth. And because if we're going to do this, actually do this, you need to know who I really am. Not the Duke who makes grand gestures in council chambers. The man who lies to women he claims to care about because honesty is harder than deception. Elowyn absorbed this. It should make her angrier, probably. Should make her question everything again. Instead, she felt something else. Something like recognition. I was glad when you ignored me, she said quietly. Ronan's head snapped up. What? You want ugly truth? That first year of marriage, when you kept your distance, part of me was glad, because it meant I didn't have to try. Didn't have to figure out how to be a wife to a man I barely knew. I could just exist, safe and separate. She forced herself to meet his eyes. I was lonely, yes, but I was also comfortable in that loneliness. It was familiar, and when you started keeping more distance, I convinced myself it was what I wanted. Elowyn, I'm not done. Her voice was stronger now. I spent 8 years blaming you for the coldness between us, but I never fought for anything different, never demanded more. I just accepted it. Accepted being the ignored wife because being anything else would have required courage I didn't have. They sat there, two people who'd been married for 8 years finally admitting their failures to each other. We're both cowards, Ronan said finally. Apparently. But you found your courage, filed that petition, faced down the council, because I was desperate.
Because my father died and I couldn't keep living the lie anymore. Elowin's voice cracked. That's not bravery. That's just being pushed so far you have no choice but to push back. It's still brave. Then so are you. Standing up in that chamber, exposing Pemberton, was protecting you. Selfish again, not noble. Despite everything, Elowin laughed. It came out watery, but real. We're a mess, she said. Completely. What are we supposed to do with that? Ronan shifted on the bench, turning to face her more fully. Start over. Right here. No more pretending we're something we're not. No more grand gestures or noble sacrifices. Just two people trying to figure out how to be married honestly. Is that even possible after 8 years? I don't know. His hand cupped her face, gentle. But I'd like to try. Elowin leaned into his touch. No more secrets. No more secrets, he agreed, and no more separate wings. If we're doing this, we share a bedroom. His eyes widened slightly. Elowin, I'm not saying we have to. She felt heat rise in her face, but I'm tired of sleeping alone, tired of waking up and remembering I'm married to someone I never see. If nothing else, I want to know you're there. All right, Ronan's voice was quiet. We'll share a bedroom. Which one? Yours. Mine feels like a tomb. Mine's full of books and papers and perfect. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. I want to see your life. Actually see it. They were close now. Close enough that Elowin could see the flecks of darker gray in his eyes, the small scar above his left eyebrow she'd never noticed before. Can I kiss you? Ronan asked. The question, the fact that he asked instead of assuming, made something in her chest warm. Yes. This kiss was different than the desperate collision in her rooms last night. Slower. Gentler. Like they had time now. Like they weren't racing against 8 years of distance, but actually building something new. When they pulled apart, Ronan rested his forehead against hers. We're going to mess this up, he said. Probably. We're going to fight and hurt each other, and I know. Elowin's hands were on his chest, feeling his heartbeat, but at least we'll be doing it honestly. They sat there in the conservatory as afternoon light filtered through glass, two people who'd been strangers for 8 years finally starting to become something real. The next week was strange. The investigation proceeded. Council members interviewed witnesses, examined documents, tracked property purchases. The newspapers had a field day. Scandal involving both a dead lord and a sitting Lord Chancellor was too delicious to ignore. But inside Carrick Manor, something quieter was happening. Elowin moved her things into Ronan's wing. Not all at once, she was too practical for that, but gradually. Books, clothes, the small personal items that made a space feel lived in. Ronan watched this migration with something like wonder. You're really staying, he said one evening, finding her arranging books on their shelves. Did you think I'd change my mind? I thought you'd realize what a terrible idea it was and retreat to safety. This is terrifying, Elowin admitted, but it's also... She paused, searching for the word. What? Right, it feels right. They learned each other slowly. Small things at first. Ronan took his coffee black, but liked honey in his tea. Elowin read late into the night and was useless before 10 in the morning. He paced when he was thinking. She twisted her hair when she was nervous. They had their first real argument 3 days in. Ronan wanted to handle all communication with the council, to shield Elowin from the investigation's uglier aspects. Elowin told him in very clear terms that she wasn't a fragile decoration, and if he tried to manage her life without consulting her, she'd move back to her old rooms immediately. It was loud. Mrs. Davies heard everything and quietly closed doors throughout the manor. Afterwards, they sat on opposite sides of their bedroom, both furious. I was trying to help, Ronan said finally. I don't need that kind of help. I need a partner who trusts me to handle difficult things. I do trust you. Then act like it. Elowin's voice was sharp. Stop trying to protect me from everything. I'm not breakable. I know you're not. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. But that doesn't mean I want to watch you suffer. That's not your choice to make. They stared at each other across the room. This is hard, Ronan said. Yes. I don't know how to be a husband, not a real one. I don't know how to be a wife. Elowin's anger was fading into something more tired. We're both making this up as we go. Can we— He stopped. Can we agree to tell each other when we're making it up badly? Despite herself, Elowen smiled. Deal.
They made up that night, not with words. Both were too exhausted for more talking, but with proximity. Sleeping in the same bed, close enough to feel each other's warmth, was becoming familiar, comforting even. The investigation's preliminary findings came back at the end of the week. Lord Hastings delivered them personally, which Elowen took as either a very good sign or a very bad one. They met him in Ronan's study. Their study now, Elowen supposed. She'd started doing her own correspondence there, spreading her papers across the second desk Ronan had moved in without asking if she wanted it. Duchess, Duke. Hastings settled into a chair. The preliminary investigation confirms Lord Ashford committed fraud on a significant scale. 23 separate investment schemes involving approximately 60 victims. Total losses before Duke Carrick's private compensations would have exceeded 200,000. Elowen's stomach churned. 200,000. Her father had stolen 200,000 from people who trusted him. The victims? She asked quietly. Most were compensated anonymously, as Duke Carrick reported. Those who weren't were arranging restitution now. Hastings pulled out another document. As for Lord Chancellor Pemberton, his purchases appear to have been made with knowledge of the fraud's impact, if not of the fraud itself. Whether that rises to criminal activity is debatable. Debatable, Ronan repeated. Meaning he's very good at covering his tracks. The purchases were legal, the prices, while low, could be justified as market conditions. Unless we can prove he knew about the fraud specifically, we can't prosecute. So he gets away with it, Elowen said. Not exactly. Hastings' expression was grim. He's been removed from the council leadership, his reputation is destroyed, and several of the families he bought from are pursuing civil action to recover property based on duress. He'll be fighting lawsuits for years. But he won't go to prison. No, I'm sorry, Duchess. Sometimes justice is imperfect. Elowen looked at Ronan, who was watching her carefully. It's enough, she said finally. It's not perfect, but it's enough. Hastings stood. The council will be issuing a formal report in 2 weeks. It will acknowledge Lord Ashford's crimes, detail the investigation's findings, and recommend policy changes to prevent similar fraud in the future. Your name will be mentioned favorably, Duchess, for having the courage to bring this forward. I don't want praise. Nevertheless, you'll likely receive it. Hastings moved toward the door, then stopped. If I may speak candidly. Please, what you did, exposing your own father, risking your reputation, standing before the council, it was extraordinary. Not many people would have that kind of integrity. He nodded to both of them. The kingdom is better for it. After he left, Elowen sat in silence. 200,000, she said finally. 60 victims. And I didn't know. Didn't even suspect. You were a child when most of it happened. I was 20 when we married, old enough to notice my father's behavior, his stress, old enough to trust your father wasn't a criminal. Ronan moved to kneel in front of her chair. This isn't your fault, Elowen. I know. She did know, intellectually, but the guilt still sat heavy in her chest. But all those people he hurt are being compensated, are getting justice, or as close as we can get. His hands covered hers. You did the right thing, the hard thing. Don't let guilt take that away. Elowen looked at him, at this man who'd spent 8 years as a stranger and the last week trying so hard to be something more. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For standing with me. For not letting me do this alone. She squeezed his hands. For being brave when I couldn't be. You were brave the whole time. We both were. Finally. The formal council report was released 2 weeks later, exactly as Hastings had promised. It was scathing, detailed. It laid out Lord Ashford's crimes with clinical precision, acknowledged Duke Carrick's private restitution efforts, and praised Duchess Carrick for bringing the matter to light despite personal cost. The reaction was immediate and mixed. Some of society was scandalized that a duchess would expose her own father. Others were impressed by her integrity. Still others whispered that it was all a scheme, that she'd known about the fraud, had married to cover it up, and was now playing the hero to rehabilitate her reputation. Elowen tried not to care what they said. Mostly, she succeeded. The invitations changed, though. Some doors closed, families too closely connected to Pemberton, or too scandalized by the whole affair, quietly stopped including the Carricks in their events. But other doors opened. Reformers, progressive nobles, people who'd been quietly fighting corruption in their own spheres, they reached out, wanted to talk, wanted to know how she'd found the courage to speak up. One letter stood out. It was from Lady March, wife of the Lord March, who'd sold riverside property to Pemberton at a devastating loss. The letter was short. Duchess Carrick, my husband lost everything to your father's fraud and died thinking himself a failure. Your investigation revealed the truth. He was a victim, not a fool. Thank you for giving me that knowledge. It doesn't bring him back, but it lets me remember him with pride instead of shame. LM. Elowen cried when she read it. Ronan found her in this conservatory, her preferred refuge now, holding the letter. What's wrong? He was beside her immediately. She handed him the letter without speaking. He read it, his expression softening. This is why we did it, he said quietly. For people like her, people who deserve to know the truth. I know, Elowen wiped her eyes, but it doesn't make my father less of a monster.
No, it doesn't. Ronan sat beside her. But it makes you someone who chose truth over comfort. That matters. Does it? Yes. He pulled her against his side and she let herself lean into him. It matters more than you know. They sat there as evening fell, watching shadows lengthen across the glass-enclosed garden. I got another letter today, Ronan said after a while. From who? Vivian. Elowen stiffened. What did she want?
To apologize, actually. Ronan's voice was carefully neutral. She said she shouldn't have spoken to Pemberton, shouldn't have tried to use our marriage against you. She said, he paused, she said watching you stand up to the council made her realize she'd been fighting for the wrong thing. Which was? Me. She'd been fighting to get me back when she should have been fighting for herself, for her own life, her own future. Ronan shifted. She's leaving the kingdom, going abroad to start over somewhere people don't know her story. Are you? Elowen didn't know how to finish the question. Sad? No. Ronan's arm tightened around her. Relieved, maybe, that she's finally moving on, that we can both stop pretending there was ever a future there. Did you write back? I did. Wished her well. Told her she deserved happiness, just not with me. He was quiet for a moment. I also apologized. For leading her on, for not being honest 6 years ago. For all of it. Elowen turned to look at him. That must have been hard. It was overdue. He met her eyes. I'm done running from difficult conversations. Done taking the coward's way out. Even with me? Especially with me. Elowen took a breath. Which means I need to tell you something. All right. I'm scared. The admission came out small. We've been doing this, actually being married, for 2 weeks now, and it's been good, and that terrifies me. Because what if it doesn't last? What if we fall back into old patterns? What if I hurt you again? Ronan finished quietly. Yes. He was silent for a long moment, his arms still around her. I can't promise I won't hurt you, he said finally. I'll try not to. I'll do everything I can not to. But we're two imperfect people learning how to be together, and that means mistakes, pain, difficult moments. I know. But I can promise this. I won't leave. I won't retreat to silence and distance. I won't handle my mistakes by disappearing. His voice was fierce now. When I hurt you, and I will, eventually, I'll stay. We'll fight it out. We'll fix it, together. Elowen's throat was tight. You really mean that? I really mean that. He shifted to face her more fully. I wasted 8 years being a coward. I'm not wasting any more. She kissed him then, not desperate or tentative, but certain, real. When they pulled apart, Ronan rested his forehead against hers. I love you, he said quietly. I should have said it years ago, should have been brave enough to say it when it might have made a difference. But I'm saying it now. I love you, Elowen. The words landed like stones in still water, rippling outward, changing everything. I don't know if I love you yet, Elowen said honestly. I want to. I'm getting there. But 8 years of distance, I know. Ronan's hands cupped her face. I'm not asking you to say it back. I'm just asking you to know it's true. I know. She did know. Could feel it in the way he looked at her, held her, stood with her. And I care about you. More than I thought possible. More than scares me sometimes. That's enough, Ronan said.
For now, that's more than enough. 3 days later, Elowyn received an unexpected visitor. Lady Blackwell, the council member who'd supported the investigation, arrived without warning and asked for a private meeting. They met in the same study where Hastings had delivered the preliminary findings.
Duchess Carrick. Lady Blackwell settled into a chair with the kind of efficiency that suggested she didn't waste time on pleasantries. I have a proposition for you. What kind of proposition? The council has formed a committee to draft new regulations preventing the kind of fraud your father committed. We need someone who understands both the noble perspective and the human cost of financial crime. Lady Blackwell's eyes were sharp. We'd like you to serve on that committee.
Elowyn blinked. Me?
You've demonstrated integrity, courage, and a commitment to transparency.
Those are rare qualities, particularly among nobility. Lady Blackwell leaned forward. We need your voice. Will you consider it? Elowyn's mind was racing. I've never done anything like this. I don't have experience with policy or... You have experience being victimized by a corrupt system. That's more valuable than any amount of policy expertise. Lady Blackwell stood. Think about it. Talk to your husband. Send word within the week. After she left, Elowyn sat in stunned silence. Ronan found her there an hour later, still processing. What did Lady Blackwell want? He asked. Elowyn told him. He was quiet for a moment, then, Are you going to do it? I don't know. Am I qualified?
Probably not, by traditional standards. Ronan's smile was slight. But you're exactly what they need. Someone who won't accept easy answers or political compromises. Someone who'll fight for what's right, even when it's uncomfortable. You think I should do it? I think you should do whatever makes you feel like yourself. Like you're living a life that matters, not just existing in the margins of mine. Elowyn looked at him. And you'd be all right with that? With me having responsibilities outside this house, outside being your Duchess? I'd be proud of you for it. Ronan moved closer. Elowyn, I don't want you to be just my Duchess. I want you to be yourself, fully, whatever that looks like. She stood, moving to the window. Outside, the grounds were green and alive, the gardens she'd barely noticed for 8 years, now familiar territory. My whole life, I've been defined by other people, she said quietly. My father's daughter, your wife, the Duchess, who was ignored. I don't know who I am, separate from all that. Then maybe it's time to find out. Elowyn turned back to him. If I do this, if I serve on this committee, it'll mean time away from home. Meetings, research, probably travel to interview victims and study other systems. I know. You won't... She hesitated. You won't resent me for it? No. Ronan's voice was certain. I'll support you, whatever you decide. She studied his face, looking for any sign of the old distance, the old, carefully controlled neutrality. She found only honesty. I want to do it, she said. I want to help make sure what happened to those 60 victims, to Lady March's husband, doesn't happen to anyone else. Then do it. Elowyn sent her acceptance to Lady Blackwell the next morning. The first committee meeting was scheduled for the following week. In the meantime, Elowyn threw herself into preparation, reading financial regulations, studying fraud case histories, interviewing some of the victims who'd agreed to share their experiences. It was overwhelming. It was exhausting. It was also exhilarating. For the first time in 8 years, Elowyn felt like she was building something, not just reacting to circumstances or surviving within constraints, but actively creating change. Ronan watched this transformation with something like awe. You're different, he said one night as they prepared for bed. How so? Lighter. Like you've been carrying weight for years and finally set it down.
Elowyn thought about this. I think I have. The weight of being the ignored wife, the disappointing daughter, the Duchess who didn't matter. She turned to face him. I'm still all those things in a way, but I'm also what? Also someone who matters. who can make a difference. She smiled slightly. It's strange and terrifying and wonderful, Ronan finished.
Yes. He pulled her close, and they stood there in their bedroom, their shared bedroom, still a novelty, just holding each other. I'm proud of you, Ronan said quietly. For what? For not letting 8 years of being pushed to the margins convince you that's where you belong. For fighting your way back to center stage. He pulled back to look at her. For being brave. We're both being brave, Elowen said. Finally. The first committee meeting was exactly as intimidating as Elowen had feared. She sat at a long table with 8 other people, politicians, financial experts, legal scholars. All of them older than her, all of them more experienced, all of them watching to see if the Duchess who'd exposed her father's crimes had anything useful to contribute. Lady Blackwell led the meeting with crisp efficiency, laying out the committee's mandate, draft regulations preventing fraud, establish oversight mechanisms, create protections for victims. We'll start with testimony, she said. Duchess Carrick, you've interviewed several victims. What patterns did you identify? Elowen's mouth went dry. Everyone was looking at her. She took a breath, remembered standing before the council, facing down Pemberton. If she could do that, she could do this. The primary pattern is trust, she said. Her voice was steadier than she felt. Every victim I spoke to emphasized that they trusted the person who defrauded them. Lord Ashford was known to them, socially, professionally, sometimes personally. They didn't question his investment opportunities because questioning would have implied distrust, which was socially unacceptable. So the fraud relied on social connections, one of the financial experts said. More than that, it relied on the idea that questioning a noble's honor was worse than losing money. Elowen leaned forward. The victims felt ashamed for being defrauded, like it reflected badly on their judgment. Several told me they'd rather have stayed silent and absorbed the loss than admit they'd been fooled. Which is why so many frauds go unreported, Lady Blackwell said. Exactly. The social cost of reporting exceeds the financial cost of losing money. Until that changes, until victims feel supported rather than shamed, fraud will continue to thrive in shadows. The committee members were nodding now, taking notes. Elowen felt something loosen in her chest. She could do this. She belonged here. The meeting lasted 3 hours. By the end, they'd outlined preliminary regulatory structures and scheduled follow-up sessions. As people gathered their papers, one of the legal scholars approached Elowen. Duchess, that was insightful work. Have you considered studying law formally? What? Your analysis of the social dynamics enabling fraud. It's exactly the kind of thinking we need in legal reform. The scholar handed her a card. If you're interested, I teach at the university. We have programs for mature students. Elowen took the card, stunned. I'll think about it, thank you. She left the meeting in a daze. Ronan was waiting when she got home, pacing the entrance hall like he'd been there for hours. How was it? He asked immediately. I didn't humiliate myself. I never thought you would. One of the members suggested I study law. Elowen was still processing. Like, formally, at university. Ronan's face lit up. Are you going to? I don't know. I'm 28. Isn't that too old to... It's never too old to become who you're supposed to be. Ronan took her hands. If you want to study law, study law. If you want to revolutionize financial regulation, do that. If you want to, raise sheep and write poetry. Despite everything, Elowen laughed. I don't want to raise sheep. Then don't. But don't let age or expectation or what people might think stop you from doing what you actually want. She looked at him, at this man who'd been a stranger and was becoming a partner, and felt something shift finally into place. I want to study law, she said. I want to understand the systems that allowed my father to hurt people. And then I want to change those systems. Then that's what you'll do. Ronan smiled. And I'll be right here, supporting you. Even if it means I'm busy, distracted, not playing the perfect Duchess? Especially then. His voice was fierce. I don't want a perfect Duchess. I want you, fully yourself. Even if that's messy and complicated and nothing like what society expects. Elowen kissed him then, right there in the entrance hall where any servant might see. Let them see.
Let them all see that the cold, distant marriage was over, that something real and imperfect and entirely theirs was growing in its place.
When they pulled apart, Mrs. Davies was standing in the doorway to the servants' quarters, a small smile on her usually stern face. "Dinner will be ready in an hour, Your Graces," she said. Then, softer, "It's good to see you both happy." She disappeared before either could respond. Ronan looked at Elowen. "Happy. Are you?" "Getting there," Elowen said honestly. "It's still strange, still new, but yes, I think I'm getting there." "Me too." They stood there in the entrance hall of the manor that had been a prison and was becoming a home, holding hands like newlyweds instead of a couple married 8 years. Outside, the sun was setting. Inside, something was finally beginning. 6 months passed like water through cupped hands, fast and slow at once. Elowen enrolled at the university in the spring term. The other students were mostly younger, fresh-faced and eager, and she felt ancient by comparison. But her professor, the legal scholar from the committee, paired her with a study group that didn't care about age or titles, only whether you'd done the reading. She had, always. The work was brutal. Constitutional law, contract theory, criminal procedure. She studied late into the night, Ronan often reading beside her, their desks pushed together in the study that had become truly theirs. The Fraud Regulation Committee met twice monthly. Elowen's contributions grew more confident as she learned the legal framework underlying her instincts. Lady Blackwell started deferring to her on matters of victim protection. "You have a gift for this," Blackwell said, after one particularly heated debate about whistleblower protections. "Have you considered a permanent position with the council after you finish your studies?" Elowen hadn't. The idea was simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. The council's full investigation report was published 4 months after the initial hearing. It was comprehensive, damning, and widely distributed. Lord Ashford's name was permanently tied to fraud, Lord Pemberton's to corruption, and Duchess Carrick's to courage. The invitation shifted again. Reformers, activists, people working to change systems from inside, they sought her out, wanted her perspective, her story. Some of the old guard still whispered, still called her the daughter of a criminal, the Duchess who'd betrayed her own blood for attention. Elowen learned to let the whispers roll off her back, mostly. "There's an event tonight," Ronan said one October evening, 6 months after that first committee meeting. "The Pemberton estate is being auctioned, proceeds going to compensate victims." Elowen looked up from her casebook. "Pemberton's estate? He's liquidating. The lawsuits bankrupted him." Ronan's expression was neutral. "Thought you'd want to know." She should feel triumphant, probably. The man who'd tried to destroy her was losing everything. Instead, she just felt tired. "I don't want to go," she said. "I didn't think you would, but I thought you should have the choice." "Thank you." She returned to her reading, then paused. "Ronan?" "Yes?" "Do you ever regret it? Standing with me against Pemberton, you lost allies, business connections." He was quiet for a moment, considering. "No," he said finally. "I lost people who valued power over integrity. That's not a loss, that's a correction. But your business is fine. Better, actually. Turns out there are plenty of people who prefer working with someone who won't sacrifice ethics for convenience." He moved to sit beside her. "Stop looking for reasons why I should regret choosing you. I don't. I won't." Elowen leaned into him. "I'm not used to this yet. Someone's staying." "You will be. Give it time." Time. They had that now. After 8 years of wasting it, they finally had time. The university term ended in December. Elowen's marks were strong, top of her class in 2 subjects, which felt absurd and wonderful. The committee's draft regulations were presented to the full council for a vote. The session was public. The gallery was packed. Elowen sat with the other committee members, trying not to fidget as Lord Hastings, now council chair after Pemberton's fall, presented their work. "These regulations represent a fundamental shift in how we handle financial crime," Hastings said. "They prioritize transparency, victim protection, and accountability over reputation and social standing. They are, quite frankly, overdue." The vote wasn't unanimous. 3 council members opposed the measures, citing concerns about overreach and undue burden on noble families. But the majority voted in favor. The regulations passed. The gallery erupted in applause. Elowen found herself standing, shaking hands with Lady Blackwell, with the other committee members, with strangers who thanked her for her work. Ronan was there, in the front row. Their eyes met across the chamber. He looked proud. She felt something crack open in her chest, not breaking, but blooming, like a door she'd kept locked for years, finally swinging wide. That night they celebrated quietly. Just the two of them, wine in the conservatory, watching winter stars through the glass roof. "You changed the law," Ronan said. "Actually changed it. Do you understand how rare that is? It was a committee effort. It was your effort. Your interviews with victims, your analysis of social dynamics, your testimony that got the investigation started in the first place." He turned to face her. "You did this, Elowen. You." She wanted to deflect, to minimize. Old habits. Instead, she let herself feel it. Pride. Accomplishment. The knowledge that she'd taken her father's crimes and built something good from the wreckage. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said. "You could have, but I'm glad you didn't have to." They sat there in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes from actually knowing someone, from being known in return. "I got an offer today," Elowen said eventually. "From who?" "The university. They want me to give a lecture series next term on fraud law and victim advocacy." Ronan's eyebrows rose. "You've been a student for 6 months and they want you teaching?" "Guest lectures. Not a full position, but..." She stopped. "It's something. A start. Are you going to do it?" "I want to, but it means more time away, more obligations." "Elowen." Ronan took her hand. "I'm not going to resent you for building a life, for becoming someone independent of me. That's exactly what I want for you. Even if it changes our marriage needed changing. We both know that." His grip tightened. "I'd rather have a wife who's busy and fulfilled than one who's available and miserable." Elowen studied his face, looking for resentment, for the old distance trying to creep back in. She found only honesty. "I love you," she said. The words surprised them both. Ronan went very still. "What?" "I love you." Saying it felt like stepping off a cliff, terrifying and freeing at once. "I didn't think I would. 6 months ago, I wasn't sure I ever could. But I do. I love you." "Elowen, you don't have to say anything. I needed you to know. After everything, after all the years we wasted, I needed you to know that this is real for me now, that you're real for me." Ronan pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "I love you too," he said against her hair. "I've loved you for 9 years and I'll love you for 90 more if you'll let me." They held each other in the conservatory while snow began to fall outside. Two people who'd been married 8 years finally feeling married for the first time. The lecture series began in January. Elowen was terrible at first. Nervous, stuttering, overprepared. The students were kind but clearly confused about why they were being taught by someone barely older than themselves. By the third lecture, she'd found her rhythm, started telling stories instead of reciting theory. The fraud victims she'd interviewed, the systemic failures that enabled crime, the human cost of corruption. The students started asking questions, real questions, about justice and power, and how to change systems that seemed unchangeable. Elowen didn't have all the answers, but she was learning to be comfortable with that. One student stayed after class one day, a young woman named Catherine, sharp-eyed and intense. "Duchess Carrick, can I ask you something personal?" "Call me Elowen." "And yes." "How did you know? That exposing your father was the right thing?" Catherine's voice was tight. "I mean, he was your father, and you knew it would destroy your reputation. How did you know it was worth it?" Elowen recognized something in the girl's expression, a familiar desperation. "Is someone you love doing something wrong?" she asked gently. Catherine's eyes filled with tears. "My brother, he's been embezzling from his employer. I found the evidence, and I don't know what to do." "Have you talked to him?" "He says it's temporary, that he'll pay it back, that it's not really stealing because..." She stopped. "But it is. And if I don't report it, I'm complicit. But if I do..." "You lose your brother," Elowen finished quietly. "Yes." They sat there in the empty lecture hall, two women grappling with impossible choices. I can't tell you what to do, Elowin said finally, but I can tell you this. The guilt of staying silent is worse than the pain of speaking up. I know because I lived with that guilt for 6 months, knowing what my father had done, before I found the courage to expose it, and those 6 months nearly destroyed me. But your father was already dead, which made it easier in some ways, harder in others. Elowin paused. Your brother is alive, which means there's a chance, a small chance, that facing consequences now might save him from worse consequences later. Or it might just ruin his life. It might. But his life is already being ruined, by his own choices. You reporting him doesn't ruin anything, it just makes the ruin visible. Catherine wiped her eyes. That's not very comforting. No, but it's true. The girl left looking no less troubled, but perhaps slightly less alone. Elowin mentioned the conversation to Ronan that night. Do you think she'll report him? He asked. I don't know. I hope so, but I remember how hard it was to make that choice. Elowin set down her book. Sometimes I still wonder if I did the right thing, if exposing my father's crimes after his death served any purpose beyond making me feel righteous. You changed the law, protected future victims, gave people like Lady March closure. I know. Rationally, I know. She sighed. But there are still nights when I lie awake and wonder if I just destroyed my father's memory for nothing. You didn't destroy his memory, you revealed what it actually was. Ronan moved to sit beside her. He destroyed his own memory by committing crimes. You just refused to keep lying about it. That's what I tell myself. Then keep telling yourself, until you believe it. They were still learning this, how to be honest about doubt, about guilt, about the messy aftermath of difficult choices. It wasn't always comfortable, but it was real. And real was better than perfect. In March, a year after the initial hearing, Lord Hastings invited Elowin to his office. She went alone, curious and slightly nervous. Duchess Carrick. Hastings gestured to a chair. Thank you for coming. Of course. What's this about? I have a proposition. He settled behind his desk. The council is creating a new position, special advocate for victims' rights. Someone to ensure victims have representation in criminal proceedings, particularly in cases involving powerful defendants. Elowin's heart started hammering. That's needed. Desperately needed. I agree. Which is why I'm offering you the position. The room tilted. Me? You've demonstrated exactly the qualities we need. Integrity, courage, legal knowledge, and most importantly, you understand what it means to be victimized by someone with power. Hastings leaned forward. This would be a permanent council position, salary, staff, real authority to intervene in cases. Will you consider it? Elowin's mind was racing. I haven't even finished my first year of law school. You don't need to. This isn't a judicial position. It's advocacy. Hastings smiled slightly. Though you're welcome to continue your studies if you choose. The council values education. I need to think about it. Of course. Take a week. Talk to your husband. He paused. But Elowin, and I hope you don't mind the informality, you were made for this work. Don't let imposter syndrome talk you out of it. She left his office in a daze. Ronan was waiting at home, somehow knowing she'd need him. How did it go? He asked. She told him everything. He listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Are you going to take it? He asked finally. I don't know. It's enormous, real power, real responsibility. What if I'm not ready? You stood before the council and exposed corruption that went to the highest levels. You drafted regulations that changed centuries of legal practice. You're teaching law students despite being one yourself. Ronan's voice was quiet but firm. If you're not ready now, you'll never be ready, because ready is a myth. You just do the work and learn as you go. That's terrifying. Yes, but you're good at being terrified and doing it anyway. Elowin looked at him. You want me to take it. I want you to do whatever makes you feel most yourself. But yes, I think you should take it. I think you'd be extraordinary at it. It'll mean even less time at home, more travel, more obligation. I know. And you're really okay with that?
Ronan moved to kneel in front of her chair, taking both her hands. Elowen, listen to me. I spent 8 years treating you like an ornament, like something to be kept safe and separate and uninvolved in real life. I'm not making that mistake again. His eyes were fierce. If you want this position, take it. Build a career that matters. Change the world. And I'll be here, supporting you, celebrating you, learning to be the kind of husband who doesn't need his wife to be small to feel important. You never needed me to be small, didn't I? His voice was quiet. I kept you at arm's length partly because I was afraid of my own feelings, but also because some part of me liked having a wife who was contained, manageable, a duchess who played her role and didn't challenge me. Ronan. And then you stopped being contained, started fighting, started changing systems and taking up space and becoming someone I couldn't ignore or control or predict. He squeezed her hands. And I've never been more attracted to you, never loved you more. So please don't shrink yourself to make this marriage easier. I don't want easy. I want real. Elowen's vision blurred with tears. I love you. I love you too, which is why I'm telling you to take the job. She accepted the position 3 days later. The announcement made headlines. Duchess Carrick, daughter of a disgraced lord, appointed to powerful council position. Some praised the choice. Others called it nepotism, claimed she was unqualified, suggested she'd only gotten the role because of her husband's influence. Elowen learned to ignore the critics. Mostly. Her first case as special advocate came 2 weeks into the job. A young maid named Sarah had been assaulted by her employer, a minor lord named Carstairs. She'd reported the crime, but the local magistrate had dismissed it, citing lack of evidence and the lord's impeccable reputation. Sarah's solicitor reached out to Elowen directly. She's terrified, the solicitor said. Carstairs is threatening her family if she pursues this. The magistrate won't hear her testimony. She has nowhere else to turn. Elowen reviewed the file. The evidence was circumstantial but compelling. Sarah's testimony was consistent, and Carstairs had a history of similar complaints that had been quietly buried. I'll take the case, Elowen said. The hearing was brutal. Carstairs' barrister attacked Sarah's character, suggested she'd invented the assault for attention, painted her as a scorned servant seeking revenge. Elowen countered methodically. Presented the pattern of complaints, demonstrated how Carstairs had used his position to intimidate previous victims into silence, called expert witnesses on the dynamics of power-based assault. The magistrate, a different one this time, selected randomly, listened carefully. In the end, he ruled in Sarah's favor. Carstairs was convicted, sentenced to prison, and ordered to pay substantial damages. It was a small case, barely a footnote in the kingdom's legal proceedings, but Sarah wept with relief when the verdict was read. And Elowen understood viscerally why this work mattered. She told Ronan about it that night. I helped her, she said, still slightly amazed. I actually helped her get justice. You did more than that. You showed her she matters, that her truth matters. Ronan pulled her close. You're going to change so many lives in this position. One case at a time, maybe. That's how all change happens. One person, one case, one truth at a time. The work consumed her, case after case, victim after victim. Some she won, some she lost. All of them mattered. She finished her first year of law school with honors, started her second year while juggling the advocate position, barely slept, loved every exhausting minute of it. Ronan adapted, started traveling less for business, restructuring his affairs so he could be home more. They'd have dinner together most nights, talking about cases and regulations and the slow grinding work of changing systems. It wasn't perfect. They still fought about time, about priorities, about the cases that followed Elowen home and haunted her dreams. But they fought honestly now. Stayed and worked it out instead of retreating to separate wings. On their 9th wedding anniversary, Ronan surprised her. I have something for you, he said over breakfast. We agreed no gifts. This isn't a gift. He paused. It's something I should have done 8 years ago. He handed her a document. Elowen read it carefully. It was a property deed for Ashford Manor, her father's estate. I don't understand, she said. It's been sitting empty since your father died, falling into disrepair. Ronan's voice was careful. I thought, if you wanted, we could restore it.
Not as a residence, as something else. Something else like what?
A victim advocacy center. A place where people who've been defrauded or assaulted or otherwise harmed by people with power can come for help. Legal aid, counseling, resources. He paused. Your father's crimes happened there, but you could transform it into something that fights against exactly what he did. Elowen stared at the deed, at the manor where she'd grown up, where her father had orchestrated his frauds, where she'd learned to be small and quiet and obedient, turning it into a place that helped victims, that fought corruption. That's perfect, she whispered. You like the idea? I love it. She looked up at him. We could call it the March Center, after Lady March's husband, the man my father defrauded. I think that's fitting. They began the restoration that summer. It took months. The manor needed extensive repairs, renovations to create office space and meeting rooms. But slowly, the faded estate transformed into something vital. Lady Blackwell agreed to serve on the center's board. So did several of her father's victims, including a recovered and more hopeful Lady March herself. The opening ceremony was scheduled for October, 2 years after that first council hearing. The night before, Elowen couldn't sleep. She stood in the conservatory at Carrick Manor, her refuge, her thinking place, watching moonlight paint the glass silver. Ronan found her there, like he always did. Nervous? He asked. Terrified, she admitted. What if no one comes? What if we've built this beautiful thing and it sits empty? Then we'll find people who need it. We'll make sure they know it exists. He moved to stand beside her. But I don't think that's what's really worrying you. No? No, I think you're worried about standing in your father's house tomorrow and having to reconcile who he was with, what you're building. Elowen's throat tightened. Ronan knew her too well now. He was a criminal, she said. He hurt people, and I'm his daughter. Tomorrow, everyone's going to see me standing in his house, talking about victim advocacy, and they're going to think you're someone who took her father's legacy and transformed it into something meaningful. Ronan's voice was firm. They're going to see courage, integrity, someone who refused to let the past define the future. You make it sound noble. It is noble. What you've done, exposing the fraud, changing the law, fighting for victims, it's the most noble thing I've ever witnessed. I just didn't want to be silent anymore. And that choice, that refusal to stay silent, has changed everything. He turned her to face him. You've changed everything. The law, the council, victims' access to justice. Our marriage. Me. You changed too. I'm not the only one who stopped being silent, because you showed me how. Ronan's hands cupped her face. You showed me that honesty might be harder than silence, but it's the only way to actually live, not just survive. Live. They held each other in the quiet conservatory, two people who'd spent 8 years as strangers and 2 years becoming partners. I'm still scared, Elowen whispered. I know, but you're going to walk into that center tomorrow, and you're going to be brilliant, and I'm going to be there watching, being impossibly proud of you. Promise? Promise. The opening ceremony drew a larger crowd than Elowen had dared hope. Victims' advocates, legal reformers, several council members, journalists, even some of her father's victims coming to witness the transformation. Lady March stood in the front row, her face solemn but proud. Elowen gave a short speech. Nothing elaborate, just the truth about why the center existed, what it would do, who it would serve. My father committed terrible crimes, she said, her voice carrying through the restored entrance hall. He hurt people, destroyed trust, caused pain that rippled through families and communities. I can't undo that, but I can ensure his house, the place where he planned his frauds, becomes a place where victims find help, where truth matters more than reputation, where the powerless have someone in their corner. The applause was genuine, warm. After the ceremony, people approached her, thanking her, sharing their own stories, asking how they could support the center's work. Catherine, the student whose brother had been embezzling, found her near the end. I reported him, Catherine said quietly. My brother, it was awful. He's facing charges now. My family barely speaks to me. I'm sorry, Elowen said. I know how hard that is. But he's getting help, counseling, and his employer isn't pressing charges if he enters a treatment program for gambling addiction.
Catherine's eyes were red but clear. He might actually have a chance now, because I spoke up. I'm glad. I wanted you to know that your story, what you did, it mattered. It gave me courage. Catherine paused. Thank you. She disappeared into the crowd before Elowen could respond. Ronan materialized at her elbow. You all right? Yes. Elowen watched Catherine leave. Actually, I think I am. The center opened for clients the following week. The first case was a merchant who'd been defrauded by a noble. The second was a woman assaulted by her employer. The third was a farmer whose land had been stolen through legal manipulation. One by one, they came. People who'd been victimized and had nowhere else to turn. Elowen and her staff worked brutal hours, took cases other advocates wouldn't touch, fought battles against powerful defendants who thought their position made them untouchable. They won some, lost others, made progress measured in inches. But the work mattered. Every victory, however small, proved that truth could challenge power, that courage could change outcomes. 6 months after the center opened, the council approached Elowen with another proposition. We're expanding the special advocate program nationwide, Lord Hastings said. Creating positions in every major city. You'd oversee the program, train new advocates, set standards. That's enormous. It's what's needed. Will you do it? Elowen didn't hesitate this time. Yes. The program launched that spring. Elowen traveled constantly, training advocates, reviewing cases, building a network of people committed to protecting victims. It was exhausting. It was overwhelming. It was exactly what she was meant to do. Ronan traveled with her when he could. Other times they endured the separation, learning that their marriage could withstand distance because the foundation was finally solid. On their 10th wedding anniversary, they took a rare week off, just the two of them, at a small cottage by the sea. No cases, no business, no obligations, just them. They walked on the beach, talked about everything and nothing, remembered how to be still. One evening, watching the sunset paint the water gold, Ronan took her hand. Do you remember the ball? He asked. When Vivian demanded I choose. How could I forget? I was terrified in that moment. Not of choosing wrong. I knew I'd choose you. I'd always choose you. I was terrified you'd reject it, that you'd see through the performance and realize I was using you as a shield. You were using me as a shield, Elowen said. I was, but I was also... He stopped. I was also hoping that maybe, if I chose you publicly, you'd give me a chance to choose you privately too, to build something real. It worked. It did. But only because you were brave enough to demand honesty, brave enough to blow up our entire life to find the truth. He turned to face her. You saved us, Elowen, not me, you. We saved each other, she corrected. You could have let me fail, could have protected yourself when I exposed the fraud. But you didn't. You stood with me. That's what made the difference. I love you, Ronan said. 10 years married, 2 of them real. And I love you more now than I thought possible. I love you too. Elowen leaned into him. All the versions of you. The Duke who kept his distance and the husband who learned to stay. They stood there as the sun set, waves crashing at their feet, 2 people who'd found each other twice, once at a business dinner 9 years ago, and again at a ball 2 years past. When they returned to the city, Elowen found a letter waiting. It was from the university. An offer for a permanent faculty position teaching victim advocacy and reform law. She'd have to cut back on cases. Wouldn't be able to oversee the advocacy program full-time anymore. But she'd be training the next generation of reformers, teaching people to fight for victims, to challenge power, to choose truth over comfort. She showed the letter to Ronan. What do you want to do? He asked. I don't know. The advocacy work is important, but teaching, shaping how future lawyers think about justice, that could change things for decades. So do both. I can't do both. Not well. Then hire someone to run the advocacy program, someone you trust, train them, support them, but let them lead. Ronan paused. You've built something extraordinary, Elowen, but you don't have to run it forever. Sometimes building something means knowing when to let others carry it forward. She thought about this, about Catherine, about the advocates she'd trained, about the systems she'd helped create. Maybe he was right. Maybe her role was shifting from fighter to teacher, from advocate to architect. "I'll think about it," she said. She accepted the teaching position 2 weeks later, hired a brilliant young advocate named Marcus to run the program, spent months training him, ensuring the work would continue, and then she let go. It was harder than she expected, but also freeing. Her first semester teaching full-time was chaotic, but watching students' faces light up when they understood how law could serve justice, how they could use their careers to protect people instead of just accumulating power. That made everything worthwhile. 3 years after the ball, 5 years after her father's death, Elowen stood before a lecture hall of 200 students.
Justice, she said, is not something that happens automatically. It's not handed down by authorities or guaranteed by systems. It's something we choose, every day, in small moments and large ones. The students were silent, listening.
I was married for 8 years before I learned that lesson. 8 years of accepting silence, accepting distance, accepting a life that was comfortable but empty. And then my father died, and I had a choice. Keep his secrets, maintain the comfortable lie, or expose the truth and risk everything. She paused, remembering that first hearing. Pemberton's attacks. Ronan standing up to defend her. I chose truth, and it cost me. Reputation, relationships, the illusion of a perfect life. But it gave me something more valuable. Agency. The knowledge that I could shape my own future instead of just accepting what was handed to me. That's what I want you to understand as you begin your legal careers. You will have moments where comfort and truth are in opposition, where staying silent is easier than speaking up, where protecting the powerful is more lucrative than defending the vulnerable. Choose anyway. Choose truth. Choose courage. Choose to be the kind of lawyer who makes justice possible, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. The students sat in silence for a moment after she finished. Then one started clapping, then another. Soon the entire hall was applauding. Elowen let the sound wash over her, feeling something settle in her chest. This was where she belonged. Not in council chambers, not fighting individual cases. Here, teaching others to fight their own battles. After class, several students approached with questions. One young woman hung back, waiting until the others had left. "Professor Carrick?" she said quietly. "Yes?"
I wanted to say thank you for being honest about your life, about the mistakes and the hard choices."
The girl's eyes were bright.
My parents want me to go into corporate law, maximize earnings, but I want to do advocacy work, and they say I'm being naive, that I'll regret choosing passion over profit.
"Will you?" Elowen asked gently.
"I don't think so, but I'm scared."
"Good. Fear means you understand the stakes." Elowen smiled. "But don't let fear make your choices for you. I did that for 8 years. Don't make the same mistake." The girl nodded, looking steadier. "Thank you, Professor." She left, and Elowen gathered her papers, feeling the familiar satisfaction of a good day's work. Ronan was waiting in the hallway outside, leaning against the wall like he'd been there for hours. "How long have you been here?" Elowen asked.
"Long enough to hear your lecture. You were brilliant."
"You're biased." "Completely, but also correct."
He pushed off the wall, moving to take her bag. "Come on, I made reservations at that place you like." "The one with the impossible-to-get tables?" "I may have mentioned my wife is a respected legal reformer who changed council policy. They were suddenly very accommodating." Despite herself, Elowen laughed. "Using my reputation for personal gain? That's very Duke of you. I'm a work in progress." They walked through the university halls together, past students rushing to evening classes, past professors heading home. Just another couple among many. No one staring, no one whispering. It felt perfect. Dinner was quiet. Good food, better wine, comfortable silence punctuated by conversation that flowed easily. "I got a letter today," Ronan said over dessert. "From Vivian." Elowen's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "Oh?"
"She's getting married to a merchant in the southern provinces. Wanted me to know she's happy, finally. How do you feel about that?" "Glad for her, relieved, honestly, that she's moved on, built a life." He paused. She apologized again for everything at the hearing with Pemberton, said she'd been so focused on what she thought she wanted that she couldn't see what she actually needed. Which was?
To stop waiting for someone else to validate her worth. To find it herself. Ronan smiled slightly. Sound familiar? A little. They finished dessert in comfortable silence. Walking home through lamplight streets, Elowen thought about the past 3 years. The cases won and lost. The students taught. The systems slowly, painfully changed. The marriage rebuilt from rubble into something strong. I'm happy, she said suddenly. Ronan looked at her. Yes? Yes. Actually happy. Not just surviving or managing. Happy. Good. His arm wrapped around her shoulders. You deserve to be. So do you. I am. Every day with you, I am. They reached the manor as snow began to fall, the first of the season, soft and quiet. Inside, Mrs. Davies met them with her usual efficiency. Your Graces, there's correspondence on your desk. The fire's lit in the study. Will you be needing anything else tonight? No, thank you, Mrs. Davies, Elowen said. The housekeeper nodded, then paused. If I may say, Your Grace, it's been a privilege watching you both these past 3 years. Watching you become... She stopped, unusually emotional. Become what? Ronan asked gently. Become yourselves. Together. Mrs. Davies smiled. It's been a privilege. She disappeared before either could respond. Elowen and Ronan stood in the entrance hall, the same hall where they'd first acknowledged their feelings 3 years ago, and just looked at each other. She's right, Elowen said. We did become ourselves. Finally. Still becoming, Ronan corrected. I don't think we're done yet. No, but we're further along than we were. They climbed the stairs to their shared rooms, their shared life. Later, lying in bed with Ronan's arm around her, Elowen thought about the long journey from the ball to this moment. The confrontation that had shattered silence, the secrets exposed, the systems challenged, the marriage rebuilt. It hadn't been smooth, hadn't been easy, but it had been real. Every hard choice, every painful truth, every moment of choosing courage over comfort. Real. Ronan? She said into the darkness. If you could go back to that first dinner where we met, before the arrangement, before everything, would you do anything differently? He was quiet for a long moment. I'd be honest from the start, he said finally. I'd tell you I was interested, that I saw you and wanted to know you. I'd risk rejection instead of hiding behind transactions. Would I have said yes? I don't know. Maybe not. But at least we'd have had a chance at something real from the beginning, instead of wasting 8 years. We didn't waste them, Elowen said. We learned from them. Learned what not to do. What happens when fear makes choices. That's generous. It's true. She shifted to face him in the darkness. Those 8 years of distance taught us to value closeness. The silence taught us to value honesty. We had to break completely to rebuild stronger. You really believe that? I do. She kissed him softly. I wouldn't choose that path again, but I don't regret where it brought us. Ronan pulled her closer. I love you. I love you too. They fell asleep tangled together, two people who'd found their way through silence to speech, through distance to closeness, through performance to truth. Outside, snow continued to fall. Inside, warmth and quiet and the steady breathing of two people who'd finally learned how to be married honestly. The next morning brought new cases, new students, new challenges, but also new possibilities. Elowen Carrick, daughter of a criminal, wife of a duke, advocate for victims, teacher of justice, faced them all with courage earned through fire and rebuilt through love. She'd been a pawn, a decoration, a silent figure in someone else's story. Now she was the author of her own, and the story she was writing, of truth over comfort, courage over fear, real connection over polite distance, was just beginning.